Check, check, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Hey, hey. Check, check.
Oh, yeah. Okay, everyone, it's 7 o'clock. Thank everybody for coming. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask you to all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Crystal, if you could help us with the roll call, please.
Hey, Commissioner Aker,
Here.
Commissioner Callahan, Commissioner Cahalan,
Sorry, here.
Commissioner Schultz. Here. Commissioner Krenke.
Here.
Commissioner Merrick.
Here.
Commissioner Jahinski.
Here.
Mayor Adwell.
Present.
Scott Hussinger.
Here.
Amy Barrows. Here. And absent is Commissioner Hausman.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to number 4, minutes. Is there a motion or corrections to the August 30th, 2023 minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, citizens' comments on the consent agenda. Any citizens like to speak to items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, citizens' comments for the consent agenda are now closed, and we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the items on a consent agenda?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. So all 4 applicants that are on the consent agenda, you are approved and free to go, unless you'd like to stay and for the rest of the meeting. Anybody who's not sure if they're on the consent agenda or not? Okay, we're going to move on. All right, number 7, public hearing, none. 8, citizens' comments on items other than the consent agenda. Is there anyone that would like to make citizens' comments on anything on the agenda tonight? Going once, going twice. Citizens' comments are now closed. We'll move on to number 9A. DELC 0798953, unknown address south of 124 Genesee Street, owner 3 Amigos LLC, applicant Michelle and Michael Kelly. Applicant seeks approval and an amendment to the site plan to allow modifications to the exterior of the dental clinic building. Is the applicant here? Yep, come on up. Amy, you want to give us a quick overview?
Sure. So the dental clinic you approved earlier, it's under construction right now on Genesee Street as you enter downtown. The applicant is just interested in modifying the south and east building elevations, just to modify the front entry, which you can see off of Poplar. I believe it's already framed in. But instead of that front entry being recessed, it is now level or in the same plane as the rest of the building. And because of that, originally with it being recessed, they had the shake style siding, and now they're just gonna go with the horizontal planks that the rest of the building contains. Other than that, it's really hard to really notice the changes. They'll still have that entry leading to the actual area that's sided, the entry area that's sided. So there'll still be an open entry in front of it. So with that, I do recommend approval of the exterior modifications as presented, and then all conditions of their previous approvals shall still be met.
Any questions for the applicant, or do we have a motion to proceed?
I'll make a
move
motion.
approval. Question?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Move approval of the exterior modifications as presented.
Second.
Great, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes. Thank
Building
you very
looks great.
much. All right, 9B, DLC 08079850223660, Kettle Court East, owner Pine Brush LLC, care of Dave Schill and Nick Mallinger. Applicant John Kuntz, MSI General. Applicant is seeking site plan and appearance and business plan of operation approval to construct in addition to an existing building and expand the operation that manufactures a variety of brushes. Applicant would come on up, and it looks like you have. Amy?
Can he give his name and address? I'm looking for something real quick.
Red means on.
Red means on, all right. John Coots, MSI General, P.O. Box 7, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, here on behalf of Tanis Brush. I also do have Nick and Dave with me tonight as well.
Maybe you can just give us a quick overview of
Sure.
what you've done.
Sure. So I was here before the Plan Commission last month, and there were a number of concerns that were raised regarding the current design. So we did work with our civil engineer and resubmit plans to the city for review. As far as, I think I'll call it the top issue that we were trying to resolve was the parking count on the site. So the revised plan that we turned in, I just counted the stalls quick, Amy, because Amy and I were both double checking. We had proposed a plan that did have 127 stalls on it. There was a comment back from the city engineer that potentially 2 of the stalls might be in conflict with the loading dock, so that might knock us down to 125. But we were very close to the calculation of 127 that was provided by the current ordinance that we discussed last time. I do have 2 additional items of information. Archon is a company across the street from Tanis. They have an overflow parking agreement between the 2 of them. There will need to be some further discussion with Amy, of course, on that, but they do have an agreement. We're going to need overflow parking during the project construction because we're going to take away part of their parking lot anyway while we're doing the expansion, and so there was a need for being able to move employees around. I also have an updated employee count from their company, just showing that their maximum shift right now is only 87 employees. They don't expect that to grow much at all. Again, manufacturing, as I mentioned last month, is struggling for employees, so a lot of this expansion is around updating and investing in equipment to help overcome that shortfall. So they don't necessarily have an operational need at all for the 127 stalls, but we're trying to comply with the ordinance around parking requirements. So that was probably the top item that we addressed. We did resubmit landscape plans that showed surveying the existing trees. That was something that needed some further clarification, and in the write-up, I think there was a recommendation of the standard mitigation fee due to some shortage on trees. There are unfortunately some larger trees that we have to take down that are hard to replace those calipers adequately. And then we did bring some pictures of the landscape wall. That was another request last time. They do have an existing landscaping wall that we're extending, and we have samples of the block. I did not lug them here. I brought pictures. They're about 80 pounds a piece. But that's certainly something I can work out with staff as well as getting the engineering for the wall. I'm just talking
John.
until
I
you
know.
take over, Amy, so I can keep going. Or back
I
to
don't know
you.
what else to add.
Okay.
We did talk through this last month, so I don't think we need to go in a lot of detail, and John did go over his changes. In the packet, there is the dumpster enclosure picture. I know last month, the meeting, you had asked for a picture of that, and if you want, I can just quick go to it. So this is the dumpster. Now, this isn't going to be relocated, but you're rebuilding the same dumpster in the location south of the building, correct?
Yeah, we're moving the dumpster location to the south side of the building. Because we had already gotten this dumpster enclosure approved by this plan commission 3 years ago, we just copied the design. We have to rebuild it, but we're just going to keep it the same size. It works well for the dumpsters that Tanis uses. We just found a new location for it. So
Mike, could you put the dumpster on one of the screens, please?
it's a beautiful dumpster enclosure.
There's the dumpster. Double door dumpster. Okay.
With a picnic table.
With a picnic table, and it's tall. Yeah, everything that's right about a dumpster enclosure right there.
Okay, and then I'm just gonna go to the architectural renderings. So these are the building plans. There really wasn't any negative feedback at the last meeting. The only comment was making sure that you didn't have any mechanicals on the roof, which they don't have, and then understanding if they're on the side of the building that they're properly screened. But it's my understanding everything's fitting inside the building. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. On the last month, there was a comment. They currently do have some pallet storage outside due to space concerns. The operations of the expansion will not necessitate that. So that was a comment, I think, picked up by maybe someone that visited the site. Right now they do have some pallets in the back, but no long-term plans to continue that. So.
Okay. And then on the screen, you'll see that the trees that they need to remove, so they do need to put in that 13-foot tall retaining wall along the south and east lot lines, and that's gonna require some tree removal. So they are removing 17 they're removing more than 17 trees, but 17 of the trees are priority trees. They are, they have limited area to plant, so they do have to mitigate. If they mitigate the full cost other than the 7.5 inches that they're planting, they are gonna pay $14,125 in mitigation fees. That'll have to be done before you start construction. And then other than that, the reason why I was a little delayed is I was looking for the parking plan with the revised parking. I'll just go to, which I can't find at the moment. So on the screen, you'll see the parking. It's similar to the parking at last month's meeting, except on the south side of the building to the west side of the existing loading dock, they did add 10 stalls. The unfortunate thing is the 2 stalls on the east end of those 10 stalls are too close to the loading dock and probably are not practical. So they might still be falling too short. So in my report, you'll see that I'm stating that they have 119 parking stalls. That's based on a parking table that they provided. It sounds like they may actually have more stalls than that. So if they update the plan, count out their stalls and make sure that the table matches it, and if they get to 120, how many did you say you have?
With those 2 by the loading deck that are certainly a little bit challenging unless it's a really small car or something. We're at 127 right now, but I realize we probably got to talk through that a little bit. So
when we go through the recommended conditions, one of the conditions is to recommend approval subject to compliance with the parking plan. So I'll just have to work with John to make sure he is meeting that number. If that's the case, then he doesn't need a formal agreement with the adjacent property owner unless they need it for their temporary parking while they're under construction. But we won't need it for compliance with the code.
So just so I'm clear, we think we're potentially off a maximum of 2 slots now?
It sounds like they are going to be able to meet the parking spots. He just has to update the plan. So the plan has a table that says that they're proposing 119 spots, but it sounds like there are 127. We will make sure that we count
Yep.
them out and,
I got my blue dots on here
table.
if you want to double check my math. but
I'll
I-
make sure.
I counted them quick, so.
So other than that, I don't think there were any other questions. The code does require the 24-foot wide entrance drive that has previously been approved at 20 feet wide because they have one-way traffic. So as long as they continue to have the one-way traffic and that there's enough signage to ensure that that is how people drive through the site, that should be fine. It sounds like there is signage out on the property. We can certainly verify that. The other, let's just see, lighting, they did submit a revised lighting plan and it does comply with the standards of the ordinance, so the lighting plan should be good. The fixtures are the same as what exists on the property. There's just 5 additional pole lights on the east side and then the 6 additional wall-mounted lights. Stormwater management, the engineering staff has reviewed the civil plans. They have submitted a review letter September 18th. And any, all of those comments will need to be addressed prior to them being able to start construction. They'll need to get an erosion control permit. They'll need to revise their stormwater maintenance agreement. There is a notation from the engineer stating that they may need a developer's agreement. It does not appear that that is going to be necessary. There are no public improvements being proposed. And then Dan, I don't know if you have any comments. Do you feel that these improvements require Public Works Committee review and approval?
I was a little on the fence with that one. If they're gonna look at those wall plans, SCH will,
Yes, and there's a condition in
stormwater.
here. The retaining wall specifications design shall be certified by an engineer as part of building permit issuance. All provisions of section 5216F of the zoning ordinance shall be met.
yeah, and I think the necessary conditions are in there where we wouldn't have to go to Public Works.
Okay.
If they satisfy all that.
We did have a meeting, a virtual meeting with SCH, would have been Thursday, and we will be resubmitting, it's probably gonna be Monday, based on everything. So we did run through that whole review letter with Brian and got some clarification. And then the engineering on the retaining wall is in process right now, so we would turn that into staff for review.
So other than that, they are updating their business plan of operation with the addition. So they'll have 105 full-time employees, being open from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. Monday through Thursday and 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. Friday through Sunday. Hours of delivery are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Hours of garage pickup are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. I do want to actually go through something for clarification. I'm hoping you can explain a little bit for the parking counts. Let me just try to find this. I think I'm going the wrong direction. So they identified the square footages that are gonna be warehousing, manufacturing, and office space, and they increased their warehousing area, which requires the least amount of parking. But they have in their plans, here it is, some open office and a smaller office space within the warehousing space. Now, it's my understanding that those office spaces are also used by the people who are sitting in the area that's pink for office. So it's the same people that are using the space in one area to the other. And then they have a break room and bathrooms within that warehousing space as well, which is used by the employees that are in the other space. So if you feel that that's appropriate, then I just want to make sure that that's in the record with these minutes. That there aren't any additional employees utilizing the warehousing space. Questions?
No, I'd say thanks for clarifying that particular diagram as well as working to squeeze the parking spaces that you need. We like trees more than parking spaces, but we also like successful businesses, so I think this looks great and appreciate your work to get it done.
If you do recommend approval, I do recommend several conditions.
You have 8 of them. Do you have more than those?
8.
All 8? Because
All 8.
that also includes the parking plan compliance and
Yep.
and all that. So
And then just so you know, it does say fire department approval, which we will seek out one last time, but they did say that they could safely get around the building.
all right, well, I'll make a motion to approve the site plan and appearance and business plan of operations update for the addition to the existing building and expansion of the operation for 3660 Kettle Court East, subject to the 8 conditions in the planner's letter.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the hard work. We appreciate it. Okay, we are on to 10A. Is that right? No. 9C. DELC 0798978, 505 North Latham Peak Road, DELC 07989799001, 427 North Latham Peak Road, DELC 07988930001, 532 Bleecker Street, DELC 07981670002, 1014 Kenora Road, and DELC 079879896, 1016 Kenora Road. Owner Barron's Properties LLC, DLC 07989770001, 333 North Latham Peak Road. Owner applicant American Legion Post 196. Applicant Jim Barron's. Applicant is requesting final site plan and appearance approval for a 29-lot, single-family residential subdivision. Amy, what you got?
Hey. So we've looked at this plat a few times as well. So the first item on the agenda is the site plan review, which has been considered previously. There were just a few items that needed to be brought back to the Plan Commission. And one of them, the largest item, was the tree mitigation plan. So if you look on the screen, you can see all of the trees that are going to be removed are circled with red circles. They are going to be removing 358 inches worth of trees. I will say with that, they're actually also trying really hard to save as many trees as they can. So they're making intentional decisions in order to save the trees. But it's a fairly wooded lot, so there are quite a few being removed. On the staff report, I have the numbers backwards, 385 instead of 358. They're removing 358 inches. And they're planting 383 inches worth of trees. So they are mitigating more than they are removing, so they don't have to pay any in lieu mitigation fees. A copy of that landscape plan is also shown on the screen. So they'll be landscaping the medians, all of the stormwater facilities, and then they'll be planting some trees along the road and in the back of some of these lots on the west side of the property. Originally, they were gonna put, I don't know if you remember, like a native planting between the sidewalk and the road. There was some concern about whether or not they would be able to maintain that and if the snow removal would cause a problem. That is not part of these, this final landscape plan. The other item is they need to submit a final declaration of restrictions. They did submit that. They have revised their declaration of restrictions from the original submittal. They're now mimicking the Beacon Hill as closely as possible. And that is being reviewed by our attorney to just make sure that some of the things that may have been in Beacon Hill, to make sure there are non-applicable, but there are not non-applicable items in this deed restriction. So as a recommendation of approval for the site plan, I do state that the declaration of restrictions should be reviewed and approved by the city attorney. There was some description in the original I believe it was a declaration of restriction regarding lighting, but it's my understanding there is no lighting being proposed, correct? There is no signage being proposed either. They'll be paying the in lieu fire suppression fees. The site is served by sewer and private wells, so they will need to pay those fees, which they've agreed to do. We are working on a developers agreement, which will hopefully go to Common Council this coming Monday night. The goal is to get started this fall still. They do still need to get their final civil and engineering plans approved, get their stormwater permit, and then following that, they'll get their final plat approval and they can record the rest of the documents with that. But they do need to get all their stormwater stuff done, and get that developers agreement recorded. And pay a letter of credit. That's all I really have for changes regarding the site plan, unless you have any questions. The final plat review will be done as a separate agenda item.
Yep, I have a question. So the tree mitigation you're removing, you're putting back a little bit more than you're taking out. That's not including what a homeowner is gonna plant when they put in their house, or is that?
Jim Barron, 757 Garrison Court. No, that's not that's what we're gonna plant in our space, mostly public space,
Okay.
because the tree, there's a parkway and around the ponds.
Okay, I thought that was a good
And
clarification.
there are no ponds, they're bio swales.
Yeah, I just know that was something that might come up as far as, it seems like an alarming number, but when you think about the fact you're transplanting that many, and then you've got homeowners
I
that
mean,
you're planting in addition to them.
we did move the road around to avoid cutting up.
Understood.
And the biggest thing is we were able to refine the water treatment areas, and especially over there if you look at that map, you see a lot of trees on the on the lots next door, and they're outside of the building area. So, but at one point that line was a little bit east, and there were a lot of trees taken down, so we're not taking those down.
Understood. It was all to try to give you credit for doing what you did.
Yeah.
So,
You may remember too, they were gonna try to save some of the, two of the houses, right? They're
Correct.
not doing that anymore.
So
They'll be torn down.
in fact, the plan you see, the road doesn't change, the trees don't change, but the plan on the screen there shows the two houses yet. But in a few minutes, when you see the final plat, they're gone. And interviewing, well, because we're working with Miller Marriott, but actually other people had also said, you're just gonna have a better subdivision in the end if we can avoid that. And we looked at the remodeling costs on those houses, and it's gonna be better if they're gone, so.
On the plantings in the Little Boulevard, maybe both of them, I saw hydrangeas. Are those salt resistant?
I
That's
don't
been
have
checked, I'm
I
assuming.
don't,
I don't picture those
I can't answer that question.
delicate plants.
Yeah,
Double check.
we actually changed, and I guess nothing against the prior proposal, but the prior proposal had a lot of weak plants near salt. And I know this guy, I told him that they have to be hardy, so.
Okay.
Well, you might want to consider what we did on Gulf Road, and those are Carl Forest grasses.
Yeah.
And they just look gorgeous.
And I'm
And they
not
resist
opposed to
salt
that.
and
I
everything
wouldn't
that
be
the city
opposed to
can
that
throw
either.
in.
Just putting grasses in there.
I mean, we wish to comply with what we're submitting here, but if there's a better plan, if anything, we'll come back with it. But,
I liked it before, I still like it, so I'll make a motion to approve the final site plan and appearance approval for the 29 lot subdivision for the Barron's property.
And if you could just include,
All the restrictions.
you're including the 24-foot wide road,
And the
Sorry,
restrictions
I didn't do that
the
again
restrictions listed in your letter.
and the
for sure.
staff report.
second.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
You don't get to leave.
One step closer.
We'll be back.
You can stay up here, actually, please.
You want us to leave? We stay up here? Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to 10A. I'm going to skip all the same DLCs I read before and jump to applicant. Jim Barron's applicant is requesting final plat approval for a 29-lot, single-family residential subdivision. Amy?
So I'll make a few comments first because Amy already stated a lot of the issues. There's a developer agreement that's been drafted by the city attorney that was just sent to us this afternoon, and I read the entire thing in detail, and I have to say there's nothing in there I disagree with. It covers everything we want to do. So I'm comfortable that we're real close to having all the details necessary to commence construction. And I know that's not necessarily on this agenda. What's on the agenda is the final plat. And we have not moved the road around, I don't think, in 9 months. We now moved a couple lot lines. When we tore down the one house. We're going to tear down the one house. And that allowed us to better lay out the lot lines on 3 lots so they're more uniform. From early plats, there are now 5 outlots on this lot. We know on this plat, and there's a new one that's really up on the north side that has basically a large rain garden, and that what that really allows us to do is not grade the site. We're not mass grading like all these other subdivisions, which was my goal. It's a low area. It can accommodate all the runoff from those back of those lots, and so those are all owned by the association again in the end. There's no real easements on anyone's land for public facilities that we know of. A couple points, or 1 point in the discussion over time, we're going to put a sidewalk in on the north side of Parkway all the way out to Lapham Peak, and we're going to connect to the trail on Lapham Peak and to Legion to the south, so there'll be a sidewalk there. And this is what I like about the developer's agreement. It now says we will be providing that, but it would be generally at the setback, which is the city standard, but if there's a tree in the way, it's either going to bend towards the road, but if that doesn't work, we may have 1 or 2 private easements, which we will create and record to produce the sidewalk. So there may be 1 or 2 private easements for public facilities, but we don't know where those are yet, so.
So, and on that, it's similar to, I believe, Nagawicca Heights and I think Hawthorne Farms too. They show the general location of, I mean, in their cases, it was a trail system, not a sidewalk. But they provided that easement after the fact with the exact location because they did want to make sure that they were putting it carefully considering the tree placement in the field. Now, the final plat, the only thing I would say is there are still quite a few conditions that need to be met on the final plat, and nor does that need to be recorded in order for you to start construction. So if you start construction this fall and you get to a point of knowing where that sidewalk's going to go, we would preferably see any necessary easements on the final plat.
We will do that. And I know there's a list starting of things that are found that will tweak it a bit. But lot lines haven't moved, road hasn't moved.
Okay, so I do want to just go through a couple things on the final plat. So you can see the red easement area that's on the south side of some of these lots. It's really important that easement, which it sounds like it serves We Energies, and it does appear that there is a recorded access easement that served one of the houses that's not going to be there anymore. But if they're not properly vacated, then they need to remain, and if they remain, then some of those lots become unbuildable. So they need to get those properly vacated before we record.
We Energies reports to me that it's within a week or 2 that they would vacate that.
So we'll want that. And then There's several outlots that are providing stormwater management. We just need to make sure that they all have proper access easements. So there are easements that state drainage or storm sewer or stormwater, but we want them to also clearly state that they're access easements, so there'll just be some note tweaks. We talked about the sidewalk location. If the building setback detail is shown on here, I think there's just a typo. I think it says 10 foot or 0 foot rear setback. It needs to state the 10 feet. We talked about the road vacation. And then just remember, we gotta do the transfer of the, lands with the CU agreement. There's the rezone and the land use plan amendment. And so just let us know, I think you were going to transfer adjacent lands
The
first.
status is that we've got title reports and closing statements available with the Legion. We just haven't had time, and the Legion probably has to have a meeting to approve it, but we're ready to close on that,
Okay.
so
If you, because we won't receive that, if you could share that transfer.
you will be aware when it happens.
And when it does happen, not such a big deal on what's going to you, because you'll replat everything, but what goes to the Legion, we just want the description to be the outermost boundary, so it's not a sliver that they happen to own. It needs to be combined with the rest of the lands.
Okay,
Okay? And then all the existing wells shall be shown, and if they're not used for a period of 6 months, they need to be properly abandoned. And then they will need to meet their stormwater engineering comments.
well, and I will say, and there's a letter in your packet that's dated, I think, around the 6th of September. We received one yesterday, the 26th, that now has about 25 items, and I, just for background, sent a memo out to Amy that there's 3 or 4 that are quite helpful, little tweaks, other things that we need to change on the plans. And so I'm comfortable that that list is getting smaller at this time.
Well, and it's my understanding there's nothing on that list that is going to change the outcome of the subdivision. It's just a matter of getting it all done correctly. There are vision corner easements and associated language that needs to be provided on the plat too. And then there was one more, oh, actually, this is kind of important. So the civil plans show different building envelopes than the final plat, so please make sure that they match. Most importantly is probably that one lot 15, I think, in the southwest corner. So that building envelope is actually much further restricted than it shows up on the plat, because they have easements that are in the way. Now, it's my understanding that, so they have a master grading plan that they'll have to comply with, but on that plan, it states that lots 15 through 17 will be reviewed on an individual basis by the engineer at time of construction. And they are proposing, as part of the developer's agreement, it's not in your information today, they're proposing 4 early start permits, and specifically on some of these more challenging lots. And then they are asking that 2 of the lots be used as model homes similar to Beacon Hill. I'm assuming those model homes are gonna be Miller Marriott homes, like what, and then it has the same language as Beacon Hill, where if they do become model homes, they have to come in and get a business plan of operation, and they can't have a sales office, and it's limited to, I believe, 5 years. So if you have any real concern with that, let me know, and we'll tweak the developer's agreement that's going to council on Monday. It's
Is
not in your packet.
there something in that agreement about the sale and development of the last lot or anything like that?
Sale and
You know, like for maintaining the model homes and the,
they have to be sold within 5 years,
okay, so that's,
and they have to get a business plan of operation.
okay,
Are the 2 big ones.
okay.
I can't recall if there's anything else.
Anything else there on the list, Amy?
I think that'll do.
So-
So if you approve the final plat, there's a list of conditions that we are requesting that they comply with, subject to planner, surveyor, and engineer comments. and then all other approval and objecting authorities.
So this is going to be a great development. It's going to look great. You're going to have great products to sell, and you're going to be able to get started here in the fall. But you have a rather long list of things that need to be finished up, and we, just want to express our need for your, and I know you will, but just saying it out in front of everybody that we need your due diligence to finish those things up so that we all move forward smoothly.
Okay, motion to approve the final plat subject to compliance with the planner, surveyor, and engineer comments and all other approval and objecting authorities prior to common council review.
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion?
Just so the applicants know, we will not be putting the final plat on the council agenda. We'll wait until you meet all those conditions and then get it on the plat.
We understand that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, we're on to 10B, DLC 0792990 and DLC 0793997 Oakwood Drive. Owner Hendricks Commercial Properties LLC, applicant George Orwin III. Applicant is requesting approval of final plat for a single-family conservation design subdivision known as St. John's Estate. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
You got your keys, okay.
Yeah, put them in your pocket.
Put that on the record, they're right there.
I see them.
Did you ever find them? They were in the library. Somebody put them in there, and the library closed 5 minutes after the meeting.
There you go.
Now he keeps them out in front of him.
And I bought a replacement key. It was $1,200.
Oh, my God.
Gee. Wow.
Name and address?
My name is George Irwin,
Into the mic if you don't mind. Ed, sorry.
2600 North Mayfair Road. Is it up?
Yep.
Nope.
Nope. I
There
don't-
we
Yeah.
Okay, so plat for St. John's, you've seen it before. That's a 45 lot subdivision. At this point, they've gone through everything. They're under construction and they're looking for final plat approval. They've recorded the certified survey map, which breaks it up into 2 lots, so the athletic fields are separated. The developer's agreement, the open space easement, anything else? Am I missing anything else? Those 3 documents. And then, they'll go through this final plat. They also, just like the previous applicant, they have to comply with all of the planner, surveyor, and engineer comments, which are in the staff report online. And then we'll take that to council, and then as part of the final plat that goes to council, they have to wrap up some other documents. So I think there's been a few tweaks, so we'll just, if there's anything, council did approve everything except for a storm sewer easement. But if any of the other documents change with substance, then we'll have to take it back to council. So we'll be having a meeting, I think tomorrow. I'll be meeting with Michael to go through those documents to see what is, still outstanding and whether or not any of them need to go back to common council.
Yeah, to me, they're all final. If you have some minor tweaks, that's fine, but they were given to you as final.
Okay.
I've got all the, we have county approval on the final plat. We have DNR approval on doing our work, so everything everything's a go. The only question I had that you did not cover in the staff comments, because I want to direct my engineer to do it the correct way, Amy. I sent you an email. We have a boulevard and we have 2 islands in the cul-de-sac. Should we identify an easement for the benefit of the association to maintain those, because that is in public right-of-way, and I'd like to, and so typically that's not. Typically, that's how I see it, but I didn't see any comments on that when I direct the staff.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Did you
There
just
should be
volunteer to
landscape
do that?
easements.
Huh?
I said, thank you for volunteering to do that. I mean, I know it's a good thing.
How are they gonna get there?
I know.
Okay. So that,
And the previous applicant, you will also need landscape easements for any plantings in the boulevards.
one of the other comments that I heard during that meeting was the association is gonna own their outlots. I thought it's an undivided interest.
No, I don't think that, it's an undivided interest.
Yeah, okay. So I was listening carefully.
Could be maintaining, but.
I have nothing else to say other than I'm waiting for somebody to ask me a question or put it to a motion.
I'm just gonna put that landscape easement note on here.
Hearing no questions, does somebody like to take a stab at the motion?
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the final plat, subject to compliance with the planner, surveyor, and engineer comments and all their approval and objecting authorities prior to presenting the final plat to common council. I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Okay, 10C, DLC 0798094, 736 Wells Street. DLC 798098007, 737 Division Street. DLC 07980980006, 731 Division Street. DLC 798098005, 723 Division Street. Owners, Barron Property LLC. Robert Bear, am I reading the right one?
Nope.
C?
Oh, yeah, sorry, he owns it, sorry.
Okay. Robert Barron, James Barron, and Richard Barron, applicant Chris Miller, Miller Marriott. Applicant seeks feedback regarding architectural renderings for a proposed building that will accommodate offices and showroom space. Overview, Amy?
Okay, Mike, can you put the screen on, please? Okay, so the applicant is proposing to purchase 4 properties. The 3 southern properties, these are between Wells Street and Division Street. The 3 southern properties were part of a senior living condominium proposal several years ago, like in 2020 maybe, that never moved forward. So right now there are 3 lots of record approved by a CSM. And as part of that, you can see on that south half side, half of Lake Street was vacated, and then half of the middle alley was also vacated. So now the applicant wants to combine those 3 lots with a lot on the north side, south of Wells Street, and they would like to vacate the alley that is within their lot area, and then also Lake Street, matching what was vacated to the south, match going north. So the vacations will be introduced at council on Monday and then brought back to Plan Commission. I believe they have to wait 45 days, so it won't be until the following month. On this rendering I'm drawing, it looks like they're vacating the alley south of Lot 5. That's not the case. They're just vacating the alley that is impacted by their property. So this property is just outside of the downtown design area, but it is zoned CBD 2 Central Business District, and it's on the land use plan as central business. And the applicant is proposing to put their office in there for Miller Marriott, and then also rent space out in the building as well. They're gonna be coming in with a site plan that shows the location of the building, the parking, and the stormwater facilities. They had a preliminary site plan drafted, but they need to make some changes to it. So all they're really asking for right now is your feedback on the architectural renderings. And then if approved, they'll move forward on the rest of the site planning effort. But the proposed uses do comply with the CBD district. It's essentially professional office space. They will have a showroom in there and then some storage. And I guess you're looking at it, unless you want to explain the architectural plans.
Yeah.
Sure. Chris Miller, Miller Marriott Construction.
Jim, can you turn yours on to red? There you go.
Sorry about that. Jim Marriott, Miller Marriott Construction.
If you're looking at the elevations that are over here, the north elevation is actually towards Wells Street. We want it to appear more like it fit into the community. It is going to be a two-story structure in the front on Wells. If you move over to the east elevation, you can see that it is a two-story structure, but we're moving up a hill into Division Street that's about 12 feet. So the rear of that building would be a one-story structure in the back. We would occupy the entire upper floor, roughly about 7,000 feet. Maybe 40% of that will be showroom, and then the bottom would be rentable office spaces similar to our facility that we have in Heartland currently. And then if you look towards the rear of the building on the east elevation, we will have storage in the back of that building. There will also be mechanicals for that for the building back there as well. Jim, you want to touch base on your design inspiration? Yes, speak into the microphone.
I always love it. It's to kind of take on the colonial character that is prevailing in Delafield, but we have a twist to kind of give a Hamptons look to it. So I think it has a very vernacular feel, but still has its feet in the commercial.
And the interior on the second floor is going to have vaulted ceilings and so forth inside?
Yeah, so the second story, the ceilings will probably be some open trusses. There'll be 12 to 14-foot ceilings as we work through the engineering. There'll be some spiral ducts that go through it, so there'll be a combination of some modernness with the spiral ducts, with also a traditional feeling of wood structure as well upstairs. On the first floor, there'll be 10-foot ceiling heights, more traditional on the first floor.
Looking at the north elevation, can you give me an idea of the height from that, with the two-story area?
Yeah, I think it's 33 feet, if I'm not mistaken. We're short of the 35.
That's what I'm getting at, okay.
Yeah.
On that lot 6, there's a house there now. Is that going to be torn down then too?
Correct.
I'm not in love with it. I'm sorry. I guess because it's that Dutch kind of colonial style that I grew up with in Milwaukee.
It's a love-hate relationship with
Yeah.
Dutch colonials.
That, and it, to me, the larger of the two buildings, to me, it makes it look more like because of the roof line, it makes it look more like a converted barn.
So we try to dampen that feel with the blacker windows, with the lighter detailing, the gray, and the shingles. So I can appreciate your comments. That was up for discussion. And because it is a fairly large structure, going from north to south, and to soften that by adding the shingles on the upper part, and then taking a lighter color and then adding the black windows to remove that feel.
So on the Dutch part of the roof line, you're going to have what kind of material? Shingle?
Correct.
Would it be like cottage style shingles, wood
Yes.
shakes?
Yes.
Kind of like in the Hamptons.
Yeah.
If you're seeing our house that's going up in Beacon Hill right now with the shingles on that facility, it would be identical shingles to that.
I've seen it, but I can't get over the larger building with the roof line. I have a cousin who lives in a converted barn, and this reminds me so much of it.
Do you like your cousin?
Huh? I love my cousin. It's just,
These are the same, these are elevations of the same building.
Yeah, it's one
So
building.
the narrower part is facing Wells Street, that's the north elevation. And then I believe the east and west sides are probably gonna match pretty closely? We don't
Fairly
have the.
closely,
Okay.
yes. The east side is the one that will be fronting the bike path.
I do like the smaller of the two buildings, because it doesn't have that
It's
mass.
one building.
It's just one building.
Is
It's
it?
one
Oh, is
building.
this one side?
North
That's the,
elevation
you're seeing the
Oh, I thought
long
it was gonna
side
be
on one
two
side,
buildings.
No, it's just
and then
one
the
building.
other
Oh,
side.
because of the
This
size of
is
the
the
lot.
front of this building. So you can see the shed dormer here, which is here with the copper roof.
Which part is going to be facing Wells Street then?
This will be facing Wells.
Wells, oh, and that's going to go,
Yeah.
the rest is going to go backwards. Okay.
And we're working, staff has given us some suggestions on a site plan.
Yeah.
There would be some parking in front, so again, it seems a little maybe starker than it is because there's not all of the structure around it and some
Right.
of all the landscape.
Okay. I do like the bump out windows on the second floor there, of the side of it. Just gives a little depth, you know?
This right here?
Yeah,
Or
I
maybe
like
we're
that.
gonna light the west exposure because that has a big dormer like
Yeah,
that as well.
I like that, because it kind of breaks things up.
And I don't know if this is so much about like, I think that's a personal taste thing too. But as far as an architectural thing, I mean, it's not completely out of line with other things that are in the city. And it's not exactly like everything that else is in the city. I mean, I don't think we necessarily need another brick salt box type building, or we don't need another flat roofed, and
Commercial.
commercial looking building. And this is a tough area. It's clearly a transitional area in this. If you look at, you can, I was gonna say cast a fishing lure from the top of this roof, and you're gonna hit every kind of different building and use that we've got in the city in different time periods. And so I think this puts a nice transition between the apartment buildings to the south and then the residential to the north and then along the bike. I mean, having not seen it before, I know, I think it's a home run, so I'm a little different camp than Laura.
I'm in that camp, and I think that it might even set the stage for redevelopment in that area.
Yeah, I agree.
I may look at this as,
And Amy's gonna try to bring up the floor plan, but can you guys speak to the flexibility of this building based
Sure.
on the floor plan?
Sure, so, can you bring it up, Amy? Yeah, there you go. So the bottom in the blue.
I have it blue because if it's white, you can hardly see it.
Okay.
It actually looks better this way.
So on the bottom is our floor plan. So if you can imagine, you walk in the front door, you're gonna go up the stairs to our facilities, okay? We'll have a reception desk, we're gonna have a showroom area, we call it selection area, where we meet with clients. And then we have, towards the back of that building, we're gonna have our design team, our architects, our sales team, and our construction team, okay? The beauty is we can enter this building from the rear as a owner. And I think you'll see in the next meetings, there's gonna be ample parking as well. So we can really enter this building from the rear for ourselves and the front for our customers. In the bottom floor, we have roughly what we call flex offices. We have this in Heartland right now. And so what these are basically single and double offices. It's generally a professional that wants to be outside of the office. We've been in our facility for 8 years now in Heartland. We have a waiting list for people that want these offices. So I think when you look at Delafield as a whole, having this opportunity to have people that can come in and rent offices, use the downtown that's been so well taken care of, that's our thought on that first floor. They're mostly single unit offices. There's a couple doubles in there as well, what we call 2 office suites. We want to create some variety. In the 8 years that we've been in Heartland, we've never had to do any tenant improvement work on the first floor. People take their offices the way they are. The advantage of this, though, is the load bearing is through the center of the building. If we would get a major tenant that would want to come in, or lo and behold, I want to retire someday and someone wants to buy this building, it will be a very easy building to retrofit and repurpose. And that same will go for upstairs as well. So a ton of flexibility, a lot of options, even if you look 20, 30 years down the road.
What's the garage door for?
So if you look on Amy's drawing on the top there, this garage door goes into storage in the back, and that's also where we have the mechanicals.
Okay,
So that's the open area in the back of the drawings here.
okay. No,
For some reason, when you build homes, you end up with lots of windows.
oh, yeah,
Trying to avoid that, yeah.
do.
No, I'll chime in and say, I like what you're proposing here.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think it's gonna create a transitional area, you know, that we could see a really interesting future, going on in that. So, you know, I like what you have there and,
We're super excited about it.
yeah, I can see that.
Hopefully I can get in this meeting and say our address is on Wells Street.
Are the architectural design at the top of the Dutch thing, are those windows or is it just a decoration? The round?
Or those are windows.
Oh, those are windows.
Yeah.
Well, that's got a nice feature.
We are going to try to vault our ceilings in the office and have the ductwork running through it. It's going to be striking.
Mike, can you put the screen back on? I don't know if everybody's looked, it just doesn't show up very good. But they do have the south and west elevations in the packet, they're just not in color form.
Yeah.
And they do, each elevation has a different, little bit of a different vibe to it.
Correct. Yeah. We wanted to give some different feel as you walked around this building and saw it from different angles. And I do agree, I think this is, when I had the opportunity to work with the Barons, I call them Baron Brothers, I don't know if they're still here, but to get this property, I was super excited. And where some people look at it because there's this elevation change, Jim and I instantly looked at it and we're like, wow, this is a great opportunity to do a super cool building. So, and I think it can really anchor that area from there between like the lumber inn and create some great options for the city.
There's 100 things great about that property, I mean, where it is.
No,
I think it needs something like this. It's a great idea. And
our team is really excited.
I mean, you're right on a bike path that takes you like 20 miles in every direction. Yeah, the only thing, so the garage door does stand out, but that's only on the elevation. That's tucked against the hill, right? I mean.
That's correct.
Yeah,
And honestly, we're working on there's going to be retaining walls
Yeah.
that we're going to introduce in this landscaping.
It's
It is going to be tucked in, and it's a very blah-looking door in Jim's
very necessary feature.
but it will be a nice-looking door.
Very
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah.
Yes.
More of an architectural garage door,
Yes.
what it needs. Yeah,
I'll remind Jim of that.
Yeah, we'll get some glass.
there's a lot of nice ones out there.
All right, any other feedback for the applicant?
I like it too. Looks great. I was just gonna say, don't have the industrial garage door look, but you got that covered, so.
Yeah. Are these the colors you're going to be using too?
Pretty close. We're trying to keep it away from the barn look. I can appreciate there is a love-hate with Dutch colonials. Jim and I happen to love them. We have customers that don't love them so much as well.
Chris loves red with white trim.
I got overruled on that.
No red, please.
We'll talk about your formal application later, but I think it would be helpful if you had colored renderings for all 4 elevations and color material boards for the meeting.
We will have that, and we'll actually have some 3D renderings as well.
Okay.
We just haven't, we wanted to get through this meeting before we took the time to put it in our CAD software and put 3D renderings together.
Makes sense. All right, well, thank you very much. Looks like a great project.
Build it.
Okay. We are moving on to,
leave this, or could I take this?
you do whatever you want with it.
You wanna take it?
I can leave the smaller one for you.
Yep, you can bring it back the next time you come.
Thank you.
Okay, 10D, DLC 0733989-001, 4431 Vettleson Road, owner 4431 Vettleson Road LLC, applicant Mike and Sue Gatto. Representative, applicant is requesting site plan and appearance approval of an accessory building addition that exceeds the size requirements. Amy, you want to give us an overview?
Sure, do you want his name and address?
Yes, please. Yeah. Can I get your name and address?
Mike, name and address?
I'm sorry?
Name and address?
Sure, Mike Gatso, 4439 Vettleson Road, Heartland Mailing.
Okay. So this property is located on the north side of Velson Road, just west of 83. It's 1.6 acres in size. It's zone B1A, which allows neighborhood business type uses and single-family residential. So this property happens to be include a single-family home, attached garage, and then an outbuilding. That home is rented out to a tenant space, so the owner doesn't live on the property. The applicant has stated that the existing outbuilding is used for residential and hobby-type storage, and he's proposing a 2,160 square foot addition to the existing outbuilding, so it's 30 feet by 72 feet, added on to 1,080 square foot building. So the building, after the addition is constructed, would be 3,240 square feet. It would contain an open floor plan. It'd be a pole-type building, so the proposed addition would match the existing structure. And I believe, actually, I'll show this. This is the location of the addition, so it would be located between the existing building and the home. And this is a rendering of the proposed building. So similar feel, look, materials, and then I believe there's pictures in the packet as well that shows what the existing building looks like. And Mike, why is the whole property graded?
I'm sorry?
Why is the whole property graded?
So we took and so my house is right next door to this one, so I own that whole hill. So we just decided, just for the ease of the driveway, to utilize an existing building that's on the property that I own and run any cars up the back of the property away from the houses. It's a big solid tree line. The back of my property borders the Pick and Save Shopping Center. So there's a big buffer right there. And so we and ran that driveway up that hill. And then because you're gonna wanna turn into the building, so like I've got a 24-foot pontoon boat that I wanna park in my building and things. So unfortunately, trucks and trailers take up space in order to take and turn and maneuver. So we took and ran the driveway up, but then when you get right to the building, it's graded out right now about 30 feet. And we don't have any plans to blacktop that at this point in time. So we just wanted to take and have enough room to take and be able to turn into it and back things into the building without pulling out onto the grass and all of that.
Okay.
So is that gravel now, or what is
Yeah,
it?
it's just stone. So this used to be the Delsman Fur Farm. So I've lived on this property for 45 years. So Jerry Delsman used to have this property, and so it was a series of gravel raised areas for all the mink pen and fox pens. And so it was all stone, but it had grown over with grass. And so a skid steer and moving some of the existing TB around, and we brought in about 150 ton of stone for the driveway, and that's all it was. We utilized all the stone that was already on site.
Okay. So moving on, I guess the area that is not part of the driveway should really be, it should be seeded and.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be a whole lot there that's just gonna be grass.
Okay. So, as the applicant mentioned, the property has been used as a business in the past. Most recently, that building, actually going back to 1995, was used as a small engineering firm, which is a permitted use. So, the B1 district does allow retail service type businesses, but it does not allow like contractors' yards. And the applicant did state that sometimes he stores the trailers for his personal business on this property, and then he also allows friends to store equipment for short periods of time. And then the current tenant of the residence has a painting business, but I mean, the only thing he stores there is maybe a couple of ladders. That's probably not a big deal. But it's important because it's a fairly large outbuilding that you're proposing.
Sure.
That if you're using the property for residential purposes, the outbuilding truly needs to be used for residential purposes, and everything else will be prohibited or it'd be considered a violation. Or on the flip side, you could apply for a business plan of operation to operate a business on the property, but it would have to comply with the businesses that are allowed in the B1A district.
Yeah, or allowed in conjunction with that. Yeah, so the tenant that just moved in there, Ron, or commonly known in Delafield as Wazoo, so he actually rented a house from the Barrens, right next door to the American Legion post. And if that house hasn't gone under the wrecking ball, it is soon to be. And so he actually was looking for a place, and this became available. So he wanted to stay in Delafield if he could and have that same outbuilding. So he had a pole barn on the Barren property that he used to do the same exact thing with. And so now he was very interested in being able to do this and take over this section of building, which means I can't have my storage inside of it. So that's why I'm looking to take and add on to it and stay within that same framework and same exact everything that's there.
So Mike, you live immediately next
I
door.
live immediately right next door to it, yes.
And you have rather large outbuildings on that property as well.
There's one extra outbuilding on it, yes.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to figure out, you've got enough stuff, personal stuff that you're storing on your own outbuilding. Now you need to work on the rental property and expand the storage there for more of your stuff?
Yeah, so the bigger building, that's rented out to a business. So that's Sharper Image Lawn Care. And so that building, when I first built that building, my whole plan of operation, so that was all approved by Delafield, that was always going to be rented out.
Okay.
Mike, I have just a couple of questions.
Is that right?
Amy noted in her cover sheet that you use the property for your personal off-site business.
Yeah, so I am a semi-retired now general contractor. So I've been a general contractor for my whole time being there. Yes.
So is your intention to store contracting equipment in the building?
Yeah, so I've got, and I guess as time goes on and you collect stuff, and so I've got a pontoon boat and a couple of jet skis and a big Skag lawnmower and pull things and various other things that you kind of collect, skid steers and whatever that you collect through the years, as well as my contractors things from ladders. We've got a couple of trailers. We've got a 16-foot trailer that we keep. I've got a personal 12-foot trailer that I use just enclosed trailer that I use just to take and haul stuff around with and borrow to friends and things like that. It's got a little ramp door on it, whatever. I can haul my Skag lawnmower around with it and things. But yeah. I mean, you just start to collect stuff, and I prefer to have it inside, and I want to put some heat in the building. And
okay, can you repeat for my benefit? You were talking about Barrons and renting space.
Yeah, so my new tenant that is renting in this house, so he rented a house from the Barrens right next to the American Legion post. And so he lived in a ranch house right there, and so he was just removed from that building because I believe they're tearing it down if they haven't not done so. And then they had a pole barn at that property, and so the guy that rented his name is Ron Wilson. He's a painter, and he's been around Delafield for a long time. They call him Wazoo, so that's how everybody knows him. And so he rented that. So he's the new tenant there. So he's got a couple of collector cars himself, and then he does a little painting and stuff. He's kind of semi-retired now, I guess. Just physically he can't do it, so he has other guys doing his stuff, and that's all off-site for the most part. He does a little woodworking in his shop, things like that.
I'll just share a couple of concerns I have, and maybe you can clarify them.
Sure.
One is the size of the building. It's 125% larger than the SEC 52110 guideline or code. I'm not sure what that is.
Well, so the code allows a 1,200 square foot building. Anything beyond that requires plan commission approval.
Okay.
We are talking about this later on the agenda regarding a maximum building size. This would exceed that requirement, but it is not in place
Yeah.
at this time.
But it significantly would exceed that, but that's academic now, but it's also significant in terms of the current, I guess, practice. The other concern I have is that my understanding is the accessory building cannot be rented out, and I think that just includes not just the building, but the contents therein. or used for commercial purposes. And it's not clear to me that that's not the case.
Well, the tenant that's living there is going to rent the building, but, he's the tenant, but he would be renting that section of building, for his usage.
But what would that usage be?
So that would be for his cars and his little bit of painting stuff and his tools and things like that.
Okay, so I guess that's, the painting part of it, I guess, is technical commercial use.
Sure.
If he's painting his own vehicle, it's probably not, but if
I
he's.
don't think he paints vehicles, but.
Yeah, no, he does
Oh,
woodworking.
painting, I'm
He
sorry.
does woodworking painting, yeah, like house painting and a little cabinetry. They build a couple of cabinets in the shop as a hobby and, does them here and there, so. Everything happens inside the building from that standpoint.
Yeah, if he's woodworking to sell the product to others, that would be a business operation.
Yeah, well, and, if there's, I guess you would be technically correct, Amy. So depending upon, he's not doing this as a big business per se. This is a friend or acquaintance that he's got, and they build him a vanity for in a house or something like that, and they build it and then he paints it. So if that's a business, then he's going to have to come and get a business plan of operation without a doubt.
And that's the benefit of the zoning that you have is that
Correct.
you can be either personal use, single-family use, or you can be business. You've applied as the personal use, the single-family use. So those are the rules that we're using because that's what you're asking for. But then you're telling us a story that leads us to believe that maybe business is more appropriate use. So we're having a tough time deciding what is the right use, I think, is what I'm hearing from the members of the Planning Commission. So it's not clear to us, Mike.
Well, and I'm not certain that I'll be honest with you and tell you it's not necessarily clear to me because this is very, very small usage kind of stuff. So it's like, when does it cross the line between a hobbyish kind of a thing or, through the years I was a general contractor. I started out in the seamless gutter business. And so that's what we did back in the late 60s and through the 70s. And little by little you added some roofing or some siding. We chop down some trees on a property when they die, and I have a guy cut them up, and we cut them into slab wood, and we dry it inside the building where it stays nice, and then little by little, I might take and put a saw up and make it into a piece of furniture. Well, am I doing that for a business? Well, technically, somebody could buy it. I've never sold one. I've sold a piece of wood here and there. So is that really a business?
Well,
I don't know.
That's part of, the limitation on size has multiple, there's multiple reasons behind it. One is it can impact the compatibility with the neighborhood, and we need to make sure it's aesthetically pleasing, but it also, the bigger the building, the more likely it turns into a business or some other use. And that's what, the Plan Commission does need to consider that. For business uses, although he can have one or the other, the business uses in B1A are limited to retail or service establishments. So you have to keep that in mind. This area is a little bit of a mix of zoning. There's B6 out here, there's the B1A, there's residential uses, I believe, across the street, and this is a residential use. So it's a mix. It's not to say things could or couldn't be rezoned. All of that would have to be reviewed and looked at more closely. But I think the Plan Commission just needs to have an honest assessment of what's out there, because for one, I'm about to recommend conditions that are gonna be very limiting and not allow any business use at all in that building. So if that's the purpose of its construction, it wouldn't be able to function that way.
Yeah, so right now it's the plan is not for retail business use, it's for storage. So that is the intended use for it at this time. And I guess based on anything like that, if that was gonna change, somebody, be it myself or, a proposed person, if they were gonna be a tenant, would have to come here and get permission to do that.
Is it the tenant or the owner that has to get permission for this?
For the business plan of operation?
Right.
It's the tenant, with the owner has to sign off on a reimbursement form.
Does the tenant, this is confusing.
Or the occupant, whoever the occupant is.
So that can be someone different than who's living in the house. This could be like a standalone
Well, no.
Because he's
so-
got a renter in the house
Yep,
on that property.
no, so B1A, you can have single-family residential is one of the permitted uses. That's a single-family home. If you're gonna have a business on the property, I believe it says you can have, the owner or proprietor of that business can live on the property. It's different than, you can't have a single-family home and a completely separate business with like two different uses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want that.
So you can't do
That's
that.
what I
So
was
it's one or
concerned
the
about.
other. You can have a single-family use, or you can have a business use, or you can have a business use with, home occupied by the owner proprietor of the business.
So Amy, I got a horse and cart situation going on in my head. It seems to me that from what you're describing, there's a high probability that it's technically not in concert with the B1. And it seems to me that, you know, do you come in and say, well, because that might be so, which is I think what you admitted to have them come in and present that to us, versus saying, well, it might not be so, but it might be so, and you're asking for a building that's significantly larger than the current standard.
Well, I think it goes right along with the whole B1A with the way it's been for the last 45 years. I don't think the intent at this time is to do anything different than what we've been doing for years and years and years.
Well, it sounds like, and again, I'm not trying to nitpick it, I'm just trying to keep consistency with the city codes and guidelines, practices, and precedents. It sounds from your own explanation that, yes, it could be used. You argued that it might be, you know, small in nature, but one of the reasons you're expanding it is to accommodate somebody who has a business and who's likely going to conduct business in that building. It's commerce, and according to the technical reading of it, that's not permitted. And all I'm suggesting is, should he come in ahead of time for that approval versus we approve it and then wait and see what happens, when it seems pretty likely what's going to happen is that you're going to have somebody conducting commerce in part of the building that you're renting, which I didn't write the code, but the code says you can't do that.
Yeah, so the B1A, if you go back far enough, was done as a catch-up zoning from all these little things that were never really zoned, and through the years, from was my understanding, through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, that you had, you know, if you take a look at B1A, the list of businesses that are approved, it's pretty, you know, you can have anything from a bookstore to an appliance store to a bar to a mortuary to, you know, all kinds of different things, and it goes into plumbers and contractors. It's really a diverse kind of a thing, and it was done as a kind of a catch-up zoning at the time, and we fell into that whole thing, as did Jerry Delsman at the time, just having his mink farm there and the fox farm, and they were making food and some of those types of things. So in this case, the tenant that wants to go there, and this is where it can change. So we could do this under this circumstance, and all of a sudden, what happens if the tenant changes? You know, so this guy, you know, he's not, you know, he's a painter. So yes, technically he's in business, but all of his stuff, other than a couple of ladders and some boxes with some brushes and some tarps or whatever that he would store in a building, he's doing a incredibly small amount of business as far as painting an occasional cabinet that he may make or somebody else may make for him, and sprays that. Other than that, his stuff is all done off-site completely. There's nothing there. But technically, you are correct. He would be in business and living there. But what happens if all of a sudden Ron moved in a year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever the number happened to be, and somebody else moved in? They would have a completely different business, or maybe not even be in business, in which case would have to revisit that again as to how that building was being used or what the circumstances were.
I think we're in agreement that it could change, but right now it's a situation where it's clear to me it's engaging in commerce. And even if you rented some of it out, and I'm not sure if you said you would rent out space for people to put their pontoon boats in it.
No, that's for me.
No, but it sounded like you had some friends who were gonna maybe take up some of this space as well.
No, that's not my plan, but
Okay, well, I'll just go back to, it sounds like it's highly probable that the person using it would be engaging in commerce. That's just all where I'm coming from, whether it's big or small.
Sure.
And you're increasing a current building by 125% of what's technically allowed today. I put those two together, it's difficult for me to get my arms around that. I'm just one person here, but.
Yeah, I'll chime, I was gonna say, I'm reading this for in the context of what the past and existing use of the property is.
sure.
And you mentioned mink farm. I've heard stories about the mink farm. So when I nodded, I wasn't here, but when it was in operation. But I know with all the fun stuff that went on in Village Square development.
Oh, yeah.
Mink farm came up a lot. But and just in looking at this as far as the, you know, and I don't want to punish you for being honest, but yeah, there's very likely there's some spillover of some personal business use that's likely to occur. But you know, I know people that are in do auto body work, and they'll bring a bumper home and put it in their garage and finish up their day there because they want to see their kids before they go to bed.
Sure.
And that's in a totally residential neighborhood, and this is in a kind of an eclectic blend here of different uses, and I think it always has been. And based on just the neighborhood impact on the neighbors and the impact on the property values and use and enjoyment of the adjoining properties is usually what I focus on when I'm in these gray areas that Scott's talking about. So I don't see much of an issue with this at all. I think I understand that we're exceeding a building size. As far as I'm concerned, it kind of fits in to what's going on there, and I'd be inclined to approve it based on that. And I understand, I've lived out here for 24 years, and I've driven by here a couple thousand times, and there's been a dozen businesses in and out of there.
Sure.
So this doesn't seem out of the ordinary. Is what I'm
Tim, I don't disagree with your analogy with the fender in the garage.
Yeah.
The two things that come together for me is, yeah, it's a small little business, but he's asking to build a building 125% larger than the current section 52-110 allows.
Yeah, I mean, and part of my point about context and neighboring uses is it's still not going to be as big as the building to the west.
Which he owns, right?
Yes.
Which, okay, but that's just, those are my observations.
How big is your lot?
So it's between the two, my lot is just, it depends upon if you can consider right of ways or not. But the lot where I live is about 3 acres,
Yes.
and this is almost 2. So I've got almost 5 acres up there. We are completely bordered in by woods. Nobody, 999 people out of 1,000 would drive by and don't even know that anything is up on top of the hill. The building is not, you can't see it from anywhere other than a drone or an airplane flying overhead. So you can't see it from the Pick and Save Shopping Center. You can't see it from El Zietlo's house to the east of me. And you can't see anything driving by from the west to the east on Vettelson. So the building where it is completely covered from every view, every which way there is. And so the color, size, and everything is just going to extend the existing building there. Where the existing building is 36 feet, we're just adding on 72 feet to the exact size of exactly what's there.
I get all that. I just, personally, I think it's too big for 1.6 acres, over 3,000 square feet, and I hate to be, sometimes you start setting a precedence and someone starts saying, well, you allowed it up there. That's my opinion. It's just, that's a lot. It's a lot of building on 1.7 acres.
Yeah, I would have to agree that the proposed size is high for the 1.6 acres. I'm not looking at the lot next door because they're not the same lot. So to me, the relevance is not there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at specifically the lot that it's on. And, to say that a tenant might have something that they're parking some of their equipment in there and using it, to me, that's extremely minor in the case of the size of the building. that's being proposed. Now, I mean, if you took down the current structure and put this up there, it's more fitting in, let's say, just because of the size that we're looking at.
So say, I'm sorry.
What I'm getting at is this, between the current building there and your proposed building, you're looking at over 3,200 square feet,
Okay.
right? If you take out that 1,000 square foot building, in other words, you're just looking at a new building, but only the size of that 2,000 square foot building, I can say that that fits a little better in there. You're looking at a sizable addition on there, which, for the size of the lot, I just think, whether you can see it or not, it's irrelevant,
Yeah. So, and maybe you know, so it was my understanding that with B1A, so at least at one time when I was reading through this stuff, and this is going back many, many years ago, and I went through it when we built the building behind my house. So was there something that's, because this was meant to kind of mimic the zoning was like almost, I call it a downtown zoning, but you're combining the houses and businesses and all of that stuff. But wasn't there at one time like where zoning was allowed for like a quarter of an acre per business, and there were some constraints having to do with those types of things?
We keep talking business here, but you're here on a personal level. So you keep talking about
No, but that was
businesses
just
and history, and I can appreciate that. But
Yeah,
you're here looking for personal approval of a very large building.
Yeah, so where I was going with that, Dan, was one of and I get the size, the concern of it. In my mind, you're not gonna really tell the difference of a 2,000 square foot building versus a 3,000 square foot building as far as the length of it. It's not gonna, in my mind, it wouldn't matter a whole lot. Now, maybe it does. I'm just saying to me, it wouldn't matter to me a whole lot one way. We're not going high, we're not going this way and that way, we're not putting 1,000 windows in it, then, the barn looking thing or whatever. So I get all of that, and I don't even know how long all this stuff will be here. It's Heartland is looking at a big Quick Trip right across the street from me. They're looking at 300 apartment units in the gravel pit. All of that's getting built, right across the street from me. So it's but I realize that's Heartland, that's not Delafield, I get it. But at some point in time, Miller Marriott or somebody's gonna come along and wanna tear all of this stuff down and build something up there anyway. But that could be 5 years or it could be 50 years. I don't, who can say that?
That has no bearing on this. It's just the size of the building on the lot. I don't want to say 3,000 square feet is a big building. It depends on what size lot you're putting that on.
Sure.
I wouldn't have a problem with that on your 3-acre lot. On 1.6 acres, it's.
My recommendation to you would be to cut the size of the building.
And so what would be the adequate size? What would you guys like to see up there?
Well, right now, I think it's a little close to the house. I would like to see it shortened, if
So
anything.
how close to the house would you like, ma'am?
I don't know quite what's allowed. Do you know? Like a.
You could attach it.
What's allowed,
Attached.
what's allowed technically today is what he has.
If it's an outbuilding, 10 feet, right, Scott?
Yep,
Overhang?
yep. What he has today is what's allowed.
We got two Scotts over there. I think she
Oh, I
was.
see this guy. All right, they're all Scott.
No, we don't restrict it. The building code would kick in, so if you're within 10 feet or less, then you start drywalling like an attached garage.
Yeah, I mean, the building that's proposed is gonna be, I haven't taped it off, it's probably 100 to 150 feet from the living structure. I mean, this is not 20 feet away or anything. This is 100 to 150 feet from the building.
So why, I'm kind of more a little bit along the lines of Tim, but why did you pick the size that you did pick? Was there any rationale to why?
No, the existing building's 36 feet long, and I just doubled it. So they came up to 72 feet.
Yep.
And so with the I'd like to see a couple of 18-foot doors in it. Every time I put an overhead door in something, it seems like it's too narrow when you want to pull a boat in or a big truck and you're kind of going like this. So I've gone to, we used to use for 2-car garages or whatever, 16-foot doors. I've just gone to 18-foot doors with everything. So this way it's got a couple of 18-foot doors in it, and it's easy to take and swing things when you've got, a trailer on the back of a truck and you're trying to swing things in and move here, and you don't have to worry about the mirrors or, clipping the side of something this way. So it's just spacious from that standpoint. So geometrically, it just came up to
Might be
the
way to
number.
go forward is a smaller.
I'm sorry?
It might be the way to go forward, like you said, a smaller building.
Mhm.
If it's too big, then you're talking about storing boats for other people and storing, it's really what you're talking about, if you're just a single person. Unless you
Yeah,
got- Unless
yeah.
you got 10 jet skis and 6 boats or something like that, but, right? I mean, that's what it turns into being, it's a storage place for others.
Well, and I'm not saying that it wouldn't be. I mean, I could sell the property and somebody else could
And
have,
that's a
you know.
business use, which
and-
is a different, which we were just talking about, that's a different application at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, all of these things we take and we look at the rules for building or doing something now. We say, okay, it's gonna be this color or this color. We build it, I could take and go out there with a can of spray paint and spray it a completely different color a year down the road, and, and there's no stopping that, to be honest with you. And so, things can change, there's no question about it. I'll be 70 years old next year. I've lived here all my whole entire adult life. So, do I have intention of staying there? I do, but I could keel over and die tomorrow. I don't know.
So if it's not that big of a deal, the size, maybe that's the way to go, right? Skinny it down a little bit.
Well, and I certainly can, and that's why I'm asking the question is, so then what becomes instead of 72 feet long, if we make it 52 feet, then I'm gonna say, does that really matter, you guys? I mean, really?
Sure.
But, you're the ones that have to make a decision on it, so, to me, I live there, I'm the one that's looking at it, nobody else does, and 72 feet seems to be just a fine, it's way from the building. I didn't grow the size within the structure, we just kept the structure exactly as it is, we're just making it longer.
Yeah.
So to me, it just seemed really simple, so, that's why I picked it.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
All right, are there any other questions for the applicant? If there aren't, then I think we're looking for a motion.
Well, I'd make a motion, but it's going to be different than Tim's.
Somebody makes a motion, somebody seconds, we discuss, we vote, and if it fails, somebody else can make a motion.
All right. I'll move a motion to deny the applicant's request to build the building due to its size and also potential use in commerce purposes.
I'll second.
All right, is there discussion?
Yeah, I think we kind of give them some
I'm not gonna
guidance as
vote-
far as
Yeah, I'm
what
not gonna vote no without, just to deny it unilaterally. I mean, I would rather give some feedback as to what size is acceptable and, because again, I think, Tim, your point about where it's located and why, it's a unique location and unique property. So my only comment is, no, I'm not gonna vote to deny it. I'd rather give some suggestion and.
Yeah, I'd like to know, give them some have people give them some feedback on the right size. And I might be in error here looking at that entire triangle of property as one single property, and it's not. It's this is a 1.6 acre lot with he's asked for a big building. So if someone would throw an idea as far as what would,
I have a question
would
for
pass the.
I have a question for Amy, and then I'll just share my anxiety over this issue. The question is the matter we're going to talk about later, the 2%, does that have relevance to this?
No.
No, but I mean, if it does get passed, they would be allowed 1,446 square
Right.
feet
Yeah.
if it passed.
But I was just trying to get, because that relates to my anxiety, to be honest, and I know I'm the newbie here. But I look at my role as trying to be able to think outside the box, but to uphold consistency to the city's codes and guidelines. And starting to negotiate or barter over size that's still gives me heartburn. Because somebody said, then the next person who comes in might be residential. And they say, well, geez, it's close enough. When do you say that's why we have these guidelines, rules, and codes? And I still don't know what section 52.110 is. I don't think that's technically a code, but it gives us guidance on what we should be doing here, and this isn't even close.
Well, yeah, so that section, what it is saying is that you can have Scott, the building inspector, can issue a permit by right if it's 1,200 square feet or less, one building. And then it does not come to any committee. If it's more than 1,200 square feet, then it does have to come to the plan commission for review and approval. That is unlike a variance in that you can't do it unless you prove a hardship. So, under this circumstance, what he's looking at is it's referring you to the site plan section, making sure it's compatible with the neighborhood, that it's aesthetically attractive, that it's not causing adverse drainage. And the use is important. I mean, if it really does, if there's a question of use and whether or not it's a business use, I think that is a valid concern. But it's not it does or doesn't meet the code, but that is what the intent of the code amendments is trying to address, is to not have this gray area, to just define an appropriate number and be done with it.
Yeah, I guess just to put something out there, if I was looking at it like a personal, go another 36 foot, right? So take what you have and duplicate that. If you're going for business, come back and do a business and do the full thing, would be my advice. One person speaking, so.
Yeah, and actually, the point you just made, I mean, I said I think what you were proposing here is too big. If you cut that in half to 36, I think it does fit better into what you're looking to do here. It's just
personal use.
As a personal use only.
Yeah.
No business is running out of it, no matter if it's a tenant or not.
And storage is business.
That's the whole point. Well, it's only a business if you're getting some, monetary compensation out of it. If you want to store your friend's tractor in there for the winter, that's one thing. But even if your tenant wants to run a business out of it, that's running a business. This would restrict it that you can't run the business out of there. It's for your personal usage. All right, so that's a key part in this too, because you do reference that quite a few times about running
Well,
a
in
business.
this case, the tenant, it is, the zoning is for being in business or allowing it anyway. And in this case, the tenant who is renting the house also wants to rent the building to be able to have that same business.
So we're sorry, Mike, but now we're in discussion up here, so it's supposed to be just us discussing ours. No worries, just
Yeah, and if
just
you're-
reminding everyone.
If you're doing what you're just suggesting with 36, I mean, yeah, if you have a bumper in your storage area and you're sanding it down at night, to me, that's not really a business per se, and if you're storing your painting equipment, because you're gonna throw them in your truck in the morning to go drive and paint somewhere, that's not really a business, so. But the minute you go into the really big, he proposes, you're into a tougher sell in terms of it's probably gonna have commercial use, right? So that's why my advice to him would be, go with the extra 36, that seems reasonable, I'd vote for it, but it's the,
Right.
what is it, 72, that's too much.
Agreed. All right, any other discussion? All right.
We have a motion.
Because we had a lot of discussion, can you please repeat the motion, Crystal?
Let me find it.
Is it possible that, would we have to vote on the first one?
Yeah,
And
and
then
then if
propose
it,
the second one?
you could, if the opportunity presents itself.
Okay.
Okay, the motion by Commissioner Cranky was to deny the applicant's request to build the building due to its size and potential use for commerce, which was seconded by Commissioner Jahenski.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Can I see hands, please? Okay, all those opposed?
Nay.
Ed, how are you voting? I'm not sure.
Just to clarify, we can make another motion.
Well, wait a second here, we need to know how he's voting, because I can't tell.
So the purpose, just to clarify it, the purpose of failing of the motion would be to agree with it or to not agree with it. That's where I'll be honest with you.
Denying is permitted.
Deny it.
It means deny
I
the
would vote to deny.
Okay, so you got that, 4 in favor,
4 in favor, yep.
3 against. So the motion carries.
2 against.
Or 2 against,
Mike's not here.
I'm sorry, 2 against. So the motion carries, your application is denied. So,
Can I make a motion to approve?
well, not now, because now it's
gotta come
been
back.
denied.
Okay.
So he would have to make a new application and come back in and take the feedback that he's gotten from the planning commission and submit a new one.
Got it.
call
Okay.
Mike to see how he'd vote, and see who
If
else
it
is
had-
gonna be gone.
If it had failed, then we could have done that, right? So it just depends which way it goes.
Wish I would've read the manual before. All right, I think it's a good idea to expand it,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I think the important thing is had a good discussion with you, Mike. Thanks for coming. I think you got some feedback, and maybe you can move forward in a way to get closer to what you're looking for.
Yeah, maybe we'll make it smaller and twice as high.
You can try it.
There you go.
Thank you.
Have a loft.
Okay, 10E, DLC 0807985021, 3875 Kettle Court East, owner Kettle Court Circle LLC, applicant John Barker. Applicant is requesting site plan and appearance approval to construct a storage building for his business operation, Akron Manufacturing. Archon. Archon. Akron, Archon.
We're forgetting how to pronounce it. Yeah, we miss you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask what Archon, is it a?
You know, I'm so glad you did, because I was gonna state what we do,
What's the name, the origin of Archon? Is it an abbreviation or don't ask? Okay, I withdraw the
I
question.
think my dad liked Star Trek back then, I think there's something with Archon or something. I feel like, you know, before I was born. We do precision wire products, so I make different wire rings out of wire and different types of wire, bronze and brass and stainless steel.
Something you all might know, if you look in your ceiling fan in your bathroom and you look at the plastic shroud, you pull it down, there's wire loops that hold it in place. So I make all those for Brown, about maybe 15 to 20 million of those a year. That's done in the building that is across the street from Tanis. And I've got maybe 3-4 employees in there at the time. So I do have some parking spaces available to borrow to them if they need it. So that was one thing. But the other end of the business, we do a lot of snap rings for automotive. So all the drive shafts for all the cars and trucks on the road, domestic and foreign. We are the only producer in the world for them. So we hold the drive shaft together with rings. That's maybe about 100 million rings a year that we make. And then we do a lot of custom rings for aerospace, farm implement, medical equipment, you name it. Every manufacturer in our area and in the country has probably used some of our rings that we make from time to time. So that's what we do. So we keep the world going.
Sounds
I
good.
loved what Tim said. Hey, where's Tim?
He had to run out real
Okay.
quick. So if
Yeah.
you guys could give us your name and addresses for Crystal.
John Barker, and I'm at 3875 Kettle Court East in Delafield.
And you need a red light. Oh, you got one, John.
He's got one.
Oh, yeah, okay, good.
He does.
Is Tapper?
There you go.
There he goes.
Nice.
Mike Davis, Insight Landscape Design, 11525 West North Avenue, Wauwatosa.
Okay, Amy, you want to kick us off?
Okay, just looking at the pictures that were submitted.
I haven't seen pictures like this in a really long
Well, I was going old school for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I figured,
These are great.
Thank you.
Did you see the lake?
I did, thank you. That's yeah, I love
Your
that.
office overlooks that?
I do
It
like
does.
that. Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And so do the windows on his new storage building.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you remember, the applicant got approval in 2018 to improve the property with the manufacturing building. He just explained the use. There's parking out there, retaining walls, stormwater facilities, and associated landscaping. This is at the end of Kettle Court East. He did submit several revisions as part of that plan, and then it was determined after he received approval, built the building, that he completed some additional tree cutting, so he came back to the Plan Commission a few times. And at the end, the Plan Commission did approve a modified tree mitigation plan, and that plan is included in the packet. And it included on-site and off-site mitigation. So there's some off-site mitigation on the other property they own across from Tanis Brush. So now, the applicant is proposing, so here's a site plan, a 2-story storage building with a total of 15,330 square feet, which would be 800 square feet on the first floor and 530 square feet on the second floor. There will be a little deck space indent in.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm gonna probably say that's not gonna happen. I'd rather not do that little
The
deck
deck
space.
at all?
Yeah, I'm gonna eliminate
Okay.
that. It'll just be 7,800 stacked,
Okay.
and it'd be a two-story, like, sunk into the ground.
Okay, 7,800 square feet stacked.
Well, on top of each other, yeah.
And this property is zoned M1 Limited Industrial, so a bit different than the previous applicant in that it is zoned for manufacturing purposes, just so you know. The storage of office equipment and other uses normally auxiliary to the principal industrial operations is permitted in M1. The storage material will consist of extra material from the manufacturing operation, including vehicles, machinery, and equipment. Do you want to explain that a little bit, John, just so they
Certainly.
understand what's going to be in there?
Absolutely. Like I said before, we do all this manufacturing, so to do all that manufacturing, we probably have over, I'm gonna guess, at least 60 different machines that are pretty large in space. Some of them take up maybe half this table, a quarter of the table, some even larger than that. But with that comes the demand from the customer, and a lot of times I have orders that I produce for different customers that are certain times a year we don't use it, so I end up having machines that sit idle, and I have to store them, and then I have to bring them out and put them into play. And along with that comes the handling of the actual products. So a lot of times we'll make products and they will be produced off the machine, but we have to stack it, and then we have to process it. And a lot of that stacking, accessory materials like rods and baskets, totes, different types of pallets, it's all taking up space. And so I have a couple mezzanines at the one building and then the other building, and we're just out of space. And I really feel that by adding this building, we'll be able to have that luxury of that space. And I don't think I'll be filling it up right away. Maybe right away I'll probably go into maybe a third of it, or maybe, not quite, maybe even a half of it. But at least I'm planning for the future so I don't have to run out of space again in a year and come talk to you about building another building. I did actually put an offer in to buy the SCH building where Amy works out of, which is on the corner of Hillside and Maple, and I had plans and thoughts of maybe just putting up a really big facility there. And I thought, well, in light of the economy of things and the way, uncertain world, I thought, you know what, let's take that back a step. And instead of building a 80,000 square foot building, which would be double what I've got now, I'd rather just put this storage building up on a piece of property that I'm like, hey, I already own it. It's very vacant. It's a really nice key spot. No one will see it. It's kind of tucked down in there. It'll be really nice. It's right on site. I can go drive down there, put things in storage, come back, bring it up. It was really kind of more of a thought of convenience from that standpoint for me. So that's that.
So there is a bathroom and kitchenette on each floor. So John, what's the purpose of the kitchenette?
I figured I really wouldn't call it a kitchenette. I'm just going to say there's a sink.
Well, that's what the plan says.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you look at it, it should only just show like I'm talking a sink and a cabinet. That's it, and that'd be just for washing hands, and a bathroom just to use for the bathroom. Technically, I only need one bathroom in there, but I figured as long as I'm putting in, I might as well put one up top, one down below. It's easy because they're stacked right on top of each other. And then if you do look at the plan. With the other floor, the upper floor, where you had that balcony, Kent even made the comment when we had a little meeting a couple weeks ago, why do you have that? I'm like, I thought it would be nice because of the view, and then I'm thinking, I'm never going to go sit out there or look out there. It's like, I don't even need it. Why put that in there? I'd rather use the space for the storage. So the new plan that I'd present to you guys, the finals, which are pretty close to final here. And I also did away with the loading dock, figuring a lot of the stuff we're doing can just be taken out without having a truck. I've been consulting with CJ Engineering quite closely about the stormwater, the site plan, the grading, the just elevations and things. And he said, John, if you're going to do it, do you really need to have that loading dock? It'd be easier for you if you did. And I thought, you know what? I don't need it because I just bought a little 16-foot Isuzu box truck that we can actually drive right into the building and offload forklift easy enough without having the loading dock. It would present, I think, just a little bit of grade, tricky grading and everything. So I did talk to Mike about taking that plan out and not having the loading dock in that. So it'll just be 2 overhead doors down below, 1 overhead door up top. That's it. So I'm simplifying a plan a lot. And
from what is in the packet?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, same footprint, same aesthetics, same look, just, eliminate the loading dock and then Look and feel, the building will be exactly like the current building. It'll be a precast building with exposed aggregate, charcoal in color. It'll have the same aluminum trim, same aluminum windows, same looking doors. Really nice. And then because of the topography and as being going down in, you can see the elevation on that where the front, that'd be the southerly side of the building, is in the ground. You're gonna have a little bit of a retaining wall situation in a couple spots and then another one along the side. I'm gonna go with the same exact building materials that I have on the current building, which is the big outcropping coming out of Beaver Dam. My friend Mark Lemke owns rents some of the quarry up there, and I bought all the stone from him, so I've already made contact with him. He's got plenty of stone for me. It'll be matched perfect aesthetically wise, big, 15-inch tall, and anywhere from 4 to 8 foot in length and 32 inches deep. And yeah, it'll be a nice looking building in terms of that. And you probably, you'll just barely be able to catch a view of it when you come up in the backside and approach the back loading dock area of the current building. You'll be able to see it just kind of nestle down into the hillside there. To give you a reference point, if you were to stand at the current building at the rear of that building and look out towards Pewaukee Lake, I'm 6 foot tall, so I put my hand out. At be about 5 foot, that'll be the height of the rooftop of that building. So it'll be really nestled down into the ground.
That's hard to get from the pictures.
It is, because, I kind of tried, but,
Quite a slope.
I guess, Amy did give me a courtesy call today and told me about an issue with maybe tree mitigation along with the stormwater situation. Her coworker or colleague, Brian.
Hold on, can we
Oh,
just
go ahead.
back up a
Sure.
second? Mike, can you go back to go on my screen? Okay, so this is the northeast elevation on the bottom. Isn't this
is correct.
the side
Yeah,
that you're talking about?
That's the side where it would have had that balcony. That balcony will no longer be there. It'll be all just the windows across.
That faces towards Pewaukee Lake.
That does
Toward the
face
lake, but
Pewaukee
this has
Lake.
got 2 stories, right?
It is 2
Right.
stories, yeah.
Oh.
The whole building is 2 stories.
Where
The
he's
opposite
saying-
end of that would be buried into the ground.
Right.
He's saying
yeah.
the right side over there where your cursor
Correct.
is.
Yeah, that's
up
right.
From, if you're standing on his existing
Right.
blacktop
Yes, okay,
driveway of his
yeah.
existing building.
Okay,
Go, Ken.
got that. And then are both of these loading docks going, or?
That is more of the proper depiction, right there. That'll be exactly what it'll look like. I was gonna have one more door, put right where your cursor is, just go down, right
Oh,
there. That'll be another overhead door was potentially gonna go in there, just to make it so you could drive in and then drive back out with this little box truck that I have I say I can get about 8 pallets on it, which is kinda nice. It actually fits a really nice, it'll be convenient.
Are you, okay, so now I'm on the site plan here.
Sure.
Or a version of it. Are you still proposing all this,
Correct.
entrance
Yep.
and that wide of a concrete?
Yes,
pad?
correct, yep. I figured I would heat the concrete in front of there just so make it easier for me and plowing. I mean, I did heat my loading docks, I heated all my sidewalks in that building. It's beautiful. In the wintertime, nobody slips and falls, no salt, no nasty stuff getting in the building. It's really, it's nice to have, so I figured I would do that.
Okay. So, any more questions on the building itself from the plan commission? Any comments on that?
No, like it.
I like it, yeah.
Nice. I like it a lot.
Looks nice.
Yeah, I appreciate
Okay, then I just want to show the grading plan. So this does require a significant amount of grading, and there will be some retaining wall construction. Some of the grading does go onto the SEH property. If he doesn't own the property by the time he starts construction, he will need to get written approval from the property owner to grade onto the property. In that area, that happens to be a kettle, and then he's also manipulating the grades on the north side of the property, which is adjacent to, what is that, Senglob? Senglob, is that right? So the engineering, there's work to be done with engineering, enough work where engineering staff isn't quite comfortable knowing whether or not this will function properly. So they need to make sure they're including the entire watershed area and all of the disturbance. And I don't believe, so there's a future drive that would connect the building to the concrete surface to the SEH site. That hasn't been included in the calculations for stormwater management, and it really should, because then you could.
It should
go
be.
ahead and
I agree.
do it.
Absolutely.
And Mike, you're aware of those comments?
Did you guys get the stormwater, the engineering letter yet?
I didn't get any correspondence.
It probably went to, Chris Jackson.
It did, and I forwarded over to Mike late today, and I didn't
Okay.
get a chance really to read it, but I spoke with Chris today, and I believe I forwarded the email to you. Did you
Okay,
see
I'm
it or
sure I
no,
did
you
not
didn't?
see it
Okay,
if it was
gotcha.
today.
I mean, I could read it out. He had basically said, John, we've received the review comments to the site civil plans and stormwater report for the Archon Storage Building project from Brian Peel on September 20th. We have reviewed the comments. We will revise the plans and stormwater report to address all of these comments. We have the soil tests scheduled, and they should be completed in the next few weeks. Once we receive the soil test results, we will complete the revisions to plans and report, and then resubmit them to the city for approval. None of the review comments are problematic for us to address. At the Planning Commission tonight, please request a conditional approval subject to satisfying the review comments from Brian. And I said, okay, great. And I said, you're all comfortable? He said, oh yeah, absolutely, it's not a problem. And that's what he does. He's a civil engineer and does that. He did the site plans and civil engineering for all 3 buildings that I built on that street. So I trust him. He's pretty thorough and does a nice job, so. But I agree with you about the future driveway. I mean, that may or may not ever happen, but like you said, I'll be wiring the money to the title company tomorrow for closing on Monday, so I'll own the property on October 2nd.
Okay.
So, not a problem, and yeah,
Okay, so there's that, then.
I'm sorry, own what property?
I'll own the SEH property.
Oh, okay.
They will be extending, or their goal, intent is to extend sewer and water from the SEH property, right?
I believe
To
so.
this
I really wish I
building?
didn't have to have a bathroom there, because then I'd be like, I don't need I don't need any sewer and water there, but I think that's something that should be there, yeah, just a bathroom in case, so.
Okay, and then they are going to be cutting some trees, so I just don't have a very, and maybe this plan, the one you dropped off.
Yeah.
This is where Mike might need to come in and
Absolutely.
explain
We
this
have
a
like
little bit
3
better.
different versions of trees on that property, right, John?
Well, the problem, I mean, I went back and forth a million times with it, and I mean, just to clarify, and everyone knows, I mean, I did plant more trees than I should have, or that I was required to, which we
But
had
it's
all
hard to
agreed
keep,
upon.
there's
Oh,
a lot of changes, so we
I
gotta
know.
keep track of
Well,
it all.
And the problem is that land isn't flat like this table. I mean, you're talking lots and lots of topography. I mean, you walk 10 feet, you're tripping over yourself or walking, and so a lot of times when you do a plan, like Mike does his magic with, okay, John, let's put these trees, this bush, this, that. But when you get out on site, you might not be able to put it exactly there. You might have to go 4 feet there, or 7 feet there, or 4 feet there. It might go right in, or you might get the spade down in there and hit nothing but rocks. So it's like, So I took the liberty, after I heard what Amy said about trees and mitigation, I made those and cut them all, I took the plan, looked at it, and I went out there on the 4-wheeler and I looked at it and said, okay, I know that the plan was supposed to say that the trees are here, but the actual placement of where they were, I took and I put it in pen. And it shows that really there's no disturbance of any trees. I also took note, I'm like, hey, when I planted there's like 10 hardwoods all in a row, like 5 and 5. They made it the first year and none of them made it the second year. And then the 2 maples up front didn't make it either. So there's 14 trees on there that didn't make it through from now. So I mean, there are also, obviously hundreds of caliber inches of birch trees on the front. There's only 2 that are there a little bit hanging on, but they're looking like they're maybe dying. I've got in the valley, right where the building is proposed to go, there are 10 crabapple trees there. 7 are beautiful, they flower, they look gorgeous, 3 are dead. And I left them there just to show because they died this year. So as far as disturbance or removing trees, there's really none except for the 10 crabapples that are in the actual spot right where the building is gonna sit, potentially.
So the hard part, so I understand that. I remember you planting a bunch of crab apples.
Oh, yeah.
Some of these plants that didn't survive,
Uh-huh.
they technically, they should be replanted or in lieu of fees paid in order to get them to serve in a place where they would survive. And then I think Mike's report mentioned that 40 trees were gonna be removed.
I think he misspoke and he meant 40 caliber inches based, and you speak for yourself. The only thing I can think of is that there's 10 crabapple trees equaling 4 caliper inches each, would be 40 caliper inches. And maybe he meant 40 caliper inches, not 40 trees, because there aren't 40 trees in that area of disturbance that would have to be taken care of.
Are you considering all of the grading activities too?
Oh, God,
in
yes.
your-
I know where it has to be, so yeah, there's not gonna be any disturbance, any trees that are outside of that area. I mean,
So I did poke around there, from SEH's property.
It's great,
Up
yeah.
on the ridge, I was
Sure.
on a ridge.
yeah.
It does look really open, like
Yeah.
it does look like there probably is not much being cut. But what is confusing to me is the plan that's on the screen. If you overlaid your grading plan, it seems like there would be some overlap with trees that should have been there. At this point, it's so hard to know.
I think the other thing that's really difficult because we've got a lot of, and looking at the photographs, we've got a lot of.
Could you talk into the mic? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Not even close.
In looking at the photos that he submitted, and looking at the plan, which may not have all the trees in the correct locations of where they were actually planted. I think along with that, there's a lot of understory plant material growth, so it's hard to really tell where the trees are because there's a lot of buckthorn and other things growing,
A lot of greenery.
which are competing with all that green canopy now. So it's really hard to differentiate while looking at it. What may end up having to happen is we may have to tape off that area
That's
of grading and then do a little bit more.
Be great.
I think it'd be great if CJ Engineering could identify the boundary, mark it in the field.
Sure.
Flag the trees that have to be removed as part of that.
Yeah.
And we need a specific inventory, just like the other developers came in here today, a specific inventory
Just like we
plan
put together
and
the
removal
last
plan,
go around.
and then planting plan.
Yeah, because what we can do, we can basically take measurements of the area disturbance from the property line.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, and then go from the property line in and start marking some of those and connect the dots then we can know where the area disturbance is, and we just kind of flag all that, and then what's ever within that area of disturbance, then we have to then, put together an existing plan of what's to be removed, and then where it either is, if it has the ability to be moved, like we're doing with some of the crabs.
Yeah, I had stated I'd like to remove those
but if it
crabs,
doesn't,
put them in
then-
mulch and plant them back, and I'll even replace the 3 because I think they look nice.
And you'll have to be careful because the survival, you'll have to make sure you.
I'll wait till they go dormant. Yeah.
So CJ Engineering probably has to be the entity to identify this area and survey the trees because it is so hilly and valley, it's gonna be hard to identify. them.
Right.
I agree.
Correct.
He's gonna come out with soil testers, so I can call Chris and say, Chris, can you do that for me? And have him mark it off, and that way we can see.
Then the other concern with tree mitigation, and I know Mike put this in his report, you can't disturb more than 20% of the trees on the property. I think in your landscape plan, you suggest that is not happening.
Yeah, I really am rather confident that that's not.
That's
gonna
not happening?
Yeah.
So I just don't understand how that's possible when like pretty much the whole property's been disturbed at this point, isn't it?
Well, at one time, or are you talking in 20% in?
Of the site, because this has to go back to the time of which Archon building was built. Some of this.
I've already
so
paid
yours-
for
yours-
those sins, though.
What's that?
I've already paid for that
Well,
sin,
you paid
though.
for some of those sins in the area that you're now disturbing for this building, though.
Exactly, but I'm gonna move the 10 trees that are in that spot and replant them right around that whole area. If you were to pull that plan up, you'll see where the 10 crab apples will go. And I kind of want to touch on one thing about, you stated that I'm supposed to replant those. So at what point in time does the warranty run out on the hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of trees that I planted on that property? Like, am I obligated for the rest of my life, or do I have to plan this on for my son, or is it like only 1 year after you plant?
Well, if you plant them all and they die, then they really didn't
Well,
function.
well, I didn't do that. You can all be my guest. I'll come out, I'll buy you lunch, we'll have a little powwow, we'll walk the property line, we'll show every tree that I planted, we'll put a tag on it, and we'll say all these trees that I planted, all the evergreens, the pines, the beautiful river birch. I mean, I think it's a beautiful looking industrial property. You come up the street, it's a wow. I mean, I've got thousands of dollars worth of double knockout roses. I've got a wall there that's probably $1 million wall now. And I just, I want to be, I want to be nice about it, but I also don't want to like roll over and say it's okay that you just tell me that I have to plant trees. I planted them. Everybody came, you had someone come out and verify that. They looked at it. They said it. This is good. We've signed off on it. It's done. So at what point do I have to be responsible if they died 2 winters later or 3 winters later or maybe 4 years from now? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, that's for I guess the city can decide. There are communities that actually require that deed restrictions be recorded and that they be maintained in perpetuity. And if, you were to ever, are the communities going out and looking every year? Probably not. But if you come in and for a proposal like this is the time to verify that those trees are still surviving.
I'd
So
say
this is-
96%, 94% of the trees that I planted are still there and still alive and beautiful. You do have some that didn't make it. I mean, you've got some rocky soil, you've got deer rubbing up against them, you got, whatever it might be, things don't always last. But
So this is, just so everybody knows, this is the mitigation plan that was approved in 2020. And where this building is going, I mean, it would be good to see the building overlaid on a site plan with the trees that are supposed to be there and then what's being cut on a site plan.
If I remember correctly, you requested that plan be modified, so I'm just showing the trunk locations, which would be sheet 10, because you had difficulty time reading that particular plan. Because I had sheet number 7 with the topography, and you asked me to turn that off. And sheet number 8 or 9, which had the trees shown as in maturity, but there was just too much ink on the paper, so we just created that sheet number 10, which showed just the trunk locations of
That might be.
which is kind of what I gave to all of you, that shows actually what the proposed was, but then where I actually planted them, which did get approved, is more on the blue line where you like read the notes that I put on there, like this is how the trees flow, this is where we put them, concentrated them in these areas, and that's why I really firmly believe that where the building's going to rest potentially, and where all the the hard surfaces will be, will really not interfere with anything that's on the plan except for the 10 crabapple trees that I will be replanting and putting around.
Can we just reconcile this by validating that? I mean, you mentioned having the engineers out there to rope off where the erosion, or where the dirt's gonna get moved?
Yeah.
And what trees are gonna be messed up and which ones aren't?
Sure.
I guess to your point before about, are you responsible in perpetuity to maintain trees? I mean, it's a combination of the intent to preserve the environment along with the site plan of the building. And so,
Exactly.
I mean, if you're gonna miss all the trees that are there meant for screening, for your parking, and they're all dead, and those are the only 10 out of 100, you're gonna replant, someone's gonna say you need to replant those.
Oh, absolutely.
There's 2 or 3 on the side of a hill that were planted in a bad spot because a deer got them. I don't know. I mean, how do we police that? It's really the intent, and this is tricky because this solved a different problem. We're creating a new building on the problem-solving area,
right?
And a lot of these aren't doing well. But I think we have to judge this from the end result of what's going to get disturbed now.
Right.
You don't get. I think you do pay. I think you do have to pay a price for if the trees are there that are dead that you planted and they're supposed to be alive.
Right.
I think you get pinched for saying that tree's supposed to be alive. You get credit for being alive.
Yeah.
You also get pinched for moving a dead tree that was supposed to be alive.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah.
someone needs to do the evaluation, and I don't think we can do it here talking back and forth on these screens.
The other difficulty thing is the sheer change in topography and how far those trees are away from anything. So you'd have to end up hooking several hoses together, and then, you know, cause I don't know how many, it's a 5-acre site, so.
It's actually 7.
7.
Just
I'm
under
sorry.
7, yeah.
So that also adds to the,
Yeah.
just the challenge of maintaining and establishing those trees and maintaining them.
Yeah.
But I understand exactly what you're saying.
You know, I think the intent is, I mean, if a tree is not meant to be there, there won't be a tree there. There wouldn't have been one there to knock down, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's pretty straightforward. Or it's caliper inches of valuable trees that get disturbed or killed because of your site plan.
Yeah.
They need to be replaced or compensated in some way, because we'll find a good spot in the city, and the tree committee will find a great spot to put that money and they'll water them.
I
And
totally
that's
agree.
why
Worry about
maybe
them
the
going
in-lieu
on the hill with a
fees
hose.
is the easiest way to do it. You
Tim,
pay the fee, you've built out the site, and you don't have any more room
I
left.
totally agree, and that's why I'm saying on the plan that we submitted, which is accurate, there's 10 crabapple trees that I am going to take out. 3 are dead, which I will replace, and the other 7, I'll put in mulch and make sure they live, or try to make sure they live. And then if this building goes through and proposals are in, I'll replant them. It shows where we're gonna replant them, all around that nice driveway in the, like, kind of a central spot right there, right in front of that building, will help block out the building, give it a little, it won't be just a straight building, it'll have trees around it, look really nice.
I think we all believe you. None of us are gonna go check it out. We just need the plan.
Oh, sure.
And the before, after,
Yeah,
and
well,
some validation, right?
It's up there, I mean, that plan's up there showing that, you've got it on the.
Yeah, so if you, Mike, can you put the screen? I guess and I'm not trying to be difficult here, but your grading plan directly conflicts with this tree plan. So this bunch of trees in this corner that was pointed out during the previous approval,
Correct.
that's all being graded.
It's not. If you take a look at, that's why I took the liberty of showing everyone here and bringing a copy to show exactly where those as planted were and as approved were. Like I say, that was a site, that was a proposed plan, and I planted trees in the areas that are really close proximity to that, but if you look at that, you will see that it doesn't fall on that.
And so I think that was Tim's point, is let's
Okay.
just get a plan that
Sure.
then we can compare.
I can't tell, I mean,
That's good.
this is not my job, is to figure out what these pictures translate
Oh,
to.
I got you. I think that just gives you a clear shot down, and like Amy said before, she took a vantage point of walking off
But you
SCH
understand-
and seeing it, and in her words, she said, I stood right there and looked, and it is very wide open right there.
Yeah.
It is.
It
We
is,
just need a
so I
guy-
mean, I don't wanna contradict anybody, but that's contradictory, if it says it's wide open, it's wide open. I mean,
Well, I'm
there's not-
comparing it to the plan that was previously approved,
And
I guess
again,
is my point.
that's the whole point. The plan that was approved and what was planted are technically 2 different things, but it was approved. And the reason why I'm saying that is, again, topography, where I put them was right in the vicinity to where they should have been, or close enough to it, they passed.
Then we need
So-
we need to give them an updated as-built, so
Beautiful.
Yeah.
they can
That's, I think
ascertain.
that'd be perfect.
You got it there, Mike. So what else are we gonna talk about besides trees?
So so out of anything, the building seems to meet all of the requirements. I mean, they'll have to get a building permit from Scott. So the 2 big issues really are, they have to comply with stormwater management, that, an approval can be conditioned upon it, or it could come back, and then the tree mitigation, same. It could either be conditioned upon it, or come back, or perhaps if you're comfortable with them, well, they're not gonna be able to start construction without the engineering plans approved.
Absolutely.
But those are the 2 items. And then with storage, same as the previous applicant, you're allowed to have storage accessory to the business use, not.
Right.
In this case, it would be kind of the opposite. You can't just have personal storage for yourself.
I don't own anything. That's what I have a house for, and that's why I've got a house out in Phoenix I used to have. So no, I don't, and I live minimal, so I don't have any junk. So.
So are we confident the site plan is documented well enough and/or with the stuff that you've got in your requirements, once received and reviewed by staff and meet staff requirements, that we feel we'll have all the documentation we need?
With tree mitigation?
With all of it?
Well, With tree mitigation, I'm thoroughly confused. I think honestly, the easiest thing out here would be to pay in lieu fees, because I just don't think there's room out here to.
I'll say this, if I have to pay in lieu fees based on, if Chris Jackson from CJ, the engineer that's doing this, the whole site plan, if he wants to come out, which I want him to, come out and mark the whole area out, which he thinks is gonna be disturbed. Have Mike come out, pay him to do a tree inventory, what it is. In that is gonna have those 12 crabapple trees. And there may be a straggler here on an edge or so, but I'm telling you, there's no other trees that are gonna be disturbed on there. And if there are, and I'm wrong, you know my money's green. So I'm well enough confident that I'll gladly contribute to the tree fund if I have to.
So if you, Mike, if you put on the screen, so I think what CJ Engineering needs to do, this is the boundary of the grading. They need to go and they need to flag that silt fence boundary. And then Mike can identify the trees within it, and that needs to be shown on a survey and the type and size, and we go from there.
I feel
And
confident
as-
Mike's
an
got it.
as-built Existing conditions plan, is basically what you need. And then coupled with that, I would present either an augmented mitigation plan or mitigation plan and fee in lieu of plan to you.
If you want to, are you trying to start this fall? Is that what the?
Putting a
permitting is?
foundation.
Putting a
trying to get-
foundation
Because
only,
of lead times
yeah.
with materials.
Yeah, I was thinking about having Jim Marriott, the guy that sat over here, he's a friend of a friend of a friend that does precast walls, but I don't think he does exposed aggregate, and I'm not gonna compromise. I'm gonna have to go probably to FabCon in Minneapolis, where they brought the panels in last time, which are exposed aggregate, because I want it to match exactly. So those are out 20 weeks. So I would like to at least, and I don't wanna like rush this thing, but I certainly don't wanna drag my feet either, because I'd like to have it done sometime in early spring if possible. And that way, if I could get state takes a few weeks or more to do. I've got structural engineering working on it right now. That's all in the works. So the building is what it is. I want it to be that size. It fits nicely on the property. I think it does what I want it to do. And I'm confident that, if I can get rolling on this with the permission of the staff, then that way we can at least get everything organized for you guys and make sure everything, is correct, and we get rolling. It's kind of why I wanted to get this moving. That's it. So.
They can't start any grading until they get their stormwater.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, I don't know, Scott, if it's reasonable to allow them to get an early start permit with the foundation until the mitigation's resolved, and then, have to come back with the.
I think you have to understand the areas to be disturbed and the impact on whatever you're concerned about, trees. So it sounds like that's gonna happen fairly soon.
I just don't know if the plan commission holds off, then it'll be, he'll have to wait until the end of October, which,
When do you wanna move dirt?
If I had a almanac that worked, I'd be able to say, well, is it gonna freeze soon? I don't know. I mean, I'd like to move dirt maybe as soon as possible, just to get a lay of the land and set it up right, so that I can see how it's gonna really lay out nicely. But that's up to CJ. I know Chris and I spoke today. He's on it. He's gonna have soil boring done in, like he said, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then I can have the site marked off like we've been talking, and have Mike come out and do the inventory, which will be pretty easy. I'll let him use my four-wheeler. He can wheel around in there and see what things are, and if I could move dirt sometime November or whatever, something like that. But I don't want to really disturb anything too much until I get, state-approved plans, and then once I get that, I'm good. State and your approval, then I'm good.
So you should be able to come back in October then.
Yeah.
Can you just come back in October?
I can, if that pleases everybody here, I'm fine with that. I just don't want to pause it too much after that.
We could just iron out the tree thing.
Yeah.
And then
I
can
want
you-
everybody comfortable. I don't want to.
Everything else looks good. It's just.
Cool.
Yeah.
Take care
And
of
if you
this.
could update the elevations, because if
exactly. I
I
will do
remember
that, yeah.
correctly, you don't want the loading dock.
Correct.
And that shows in the
Yeah.
elevation.
Yeah.
And then you said, now you don't want the patio,
correct.
so that should be taken out, right?
Absolutely. We'll have updated and they'll be rock solid. That's really quick. That'll take. I know, because the people that I work with will be CAD drawings. I sit there and look over their shoulder. Yeah, take that out. Oh,
For hours.
yeah, for hours, yeah. So those, you'll have good plans on that too. So I mean, that'd be great. Yeah.
Anything else that's in here that you didn't want?
There's nothing else. It's a pretty simple building. I mean, it's really set up for storage. That's it. I mean, there's nothing glamorous about it other than the outside looks really nice and everything around it will look really nice. Everything in it will just be stuff.
Okay.
So,
Well, great, then we will look forward to seeing you next month.
all right, that sounds good. And then what happens from then? You guys approve that completely then, and I could probably apply for moving dirt and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks
Yeah.
for your time. Appreciate it. Take care.
Just keep the engineering going, that usually takes the longest.
Well, see, that's what I've only done this 4 times now, so it's always.
You got it?
I'm like, all right, this time
same
around I'm not
trees.
getting any.
Yeah, same trees.
Same trees.
And he doesn't just talk about the trees once, he has to come back 2 or 3 times for each tree discussion.
Don't come back 3 times on this.
3 times. Thanks, John. Take care.
Okay. We gotta set this.
Now the good stuff.
Yeah, now the good stuff.
All right, 11A, discussion and reconsider action taken at the August 30th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to amend sections of Article 1 of the City of Delafield zoning ordinance, including Section 52-16D, yard projections, and Section 52-21 street access requirements, and by amending the text Article 3 of the City of Delafield zoning ordinance, including Sections 52-89 A through D, plans of operations, and possibly other sections related to the topics specified in this notice.
Okay.
Your turn, Amy.
All right, so last month, the Plan Commission recommended that Common Council adopt an ordinance regarding several amendments. So when it did go to council, most of them were approved in theory, but I mean, they sent back the entire ordinance. But section 5221 street access requirements, there were some questions regarding when the provisions would apply. And then there was also, what was written in the staff report was a little bit different in the final ordinance. Sometimes Michael and I go back and forth, and there was, I think it's reconstruction was not included in the ordinance, but was part of the original staff report, which really wasn't being tweaked from meeting to meeting. So I apologize for that, because I'm sure that created some confusion. But, so what we did, because it is understandable with where the confusion was. So the street access requirements, it essentially says if you have an existing lot of record and you want to build on it, but it doesn't abut a public road, you need to go to Plan Commission and provide that you have an easement width of 30 feet for, 1 lot, or 60 feet for more than 2 lots. And then if you can't get that width, then you can go to Plan Commission and request a narrower width for good reason. So that's how that section was written. There was question about, well, what happens, what is new erection, reconstruction, whatever. If somebody were to rebuild completely on their property, do they now have to comply with a standard that may not be practical? Am I kind of explaining this
Mark was
correctly?
talking, Alderman Schaefer had a couple examples of
And I have-
specific
If you saw the
neighborhoods.
overview of where he and
Yeah,
his
I
neighbor
have it.
lived, it makes a huge,
Mike, can you put the screen on? So this is a really good example, and this is not the only location on the lake where you've got a road coming in, and then there's just a whole bunch of lots that were created without
well, can you
any
show them
kind
where
of
the road
access.
is? Because I doubt they can even tell exactly.
So
It's a
my
private
cursor's on
road.
the Evergreen Lane here, and then I think there
It
is an
continues
easement
all
that
the way to those
continues
houses.
through here, and I mean, there's driveway points to these different lots, but if you just look at how many lots don't abut a public road, I mean, all of these lots do not abut a public road.
Wow.
So, the question is, well, what can they do without having to go through this, kind of significant process when the lots have existed for a long time? And the concern, or the reason why this provision is really in there, and the concern is just want to make sure emergency vehicles can get to these properties safely. So after, thinking about it more, I tweaked the language. It has been reviewed by the city attorney. to now say that in this section, it's defining vacant lot, shall mean a parcel of land that is not improved by a principal building and is not served by a sanitary sewer connection or septic system. The reason why it says that is you may have torn down your building, but it's only considered vacant for this section if it has never been connected. That means it's truly been vacant. It's always been vacant, not just a redevelopment. Okay, and then it says to obtain a building permit to construct a principal building on a vacant lot, the vacant lot shall abut a public street or have a permanent easement providing adequate vehicular access to a public street. There's no reference to width. They just need to prove that they have legal access to their property. The permanent easement required under this section shall be demonstrated by written documentation satisfactory to the city and be approved by the fire chief to ensure emergency vehicles have adequate access to the vacant lot that is the subject of a requested building permit. Access to island properties are waived under this provision. So there is no plan commission review at all. If you don't demonstrate you've got access to the property, and it's not adequate, the fire department would, the fire department's gonna ensure that that you have adequate access, I guess. Now, this is not the same as, somebody creating a lot that doesn't abut a public road. Then we're looking at a whole nother provision in the land division ordinance. So this is just for existing lots that, haven't been built on. So hopefully we covered it
So that eliminates the 30-foot and 60-foot requirement, it just says adequate?
all together.
Okay.
Because I think after looking at some of these examples, it's like, well, this is probably more common than not for the old existing lots where really getting those widths isn't gonna be practical.
Yeah, so the example the alderman person said is, imagine you're one of those lots at the very end, and I know it doesn't have to be 60 feet, and there's possibility that it could be less, but it could be worst case scenario, 60 feet. Well, if you had to create 60-foot easement through that whole section, you'd be taking huge swaths of their front yards.
And they don't have to give it to you either. If you just want to convert a cottage into a 3-bedroom house on the lake,
Right.
you're
And
out
they
of
had
luck.
nothing to do with it. Some guy down the road decided to do something, right? And now all of a sudden, so it was a good catch, and there are unintended consequences that we, do our best to try to avoid.
That's why we send these up to the common council.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I think the 30 and 60 foot was in the code already.
It was.
I mean, so it's not like we created it fresh. We were just tweaking something that was already there, but it was a really good catch. Okay, so, other than that, all the other, provisions in that, ordinance remain the same, and so we would be looking for a motion unless you have additional questions on that.
Since this is my area, I'll move to, what am I basically doing, making a motion to accept these revisions and send it back to the council?
Yep, you can just, recommend common council adopt the enclosed draft revised ordinance to amend several sections of Article 1 and Article 3 of the City of Delafield zoning ordinance, subject to city attorney review.
I move that.
She was reading it off what's in your packet.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to 11B, discussion of possible action to schedule a public hearing to amend sections of Article 4 zoning district and Article 10 administration and penalties of the City of Delafield zoning ordinances.
Okay, so we went through this last month, it got refined. The city attorney's actually more involved in these amendments than I am. But it's really the administration section of the code, which was probably just untouched for a really long time. So it removes special exceptions from the Board of Appeals and, well, it just removes it entirely. It is already in the code for Plan Commission. It removes the definition of exception, special, because we created the new special exception definition. If I bring it back for a public hearing and a draft ordinance, we will be also touching, I believe it's section, or chapter 2 maybe, where it defines the roles of the different committees, and we gotta take special exception out of Board of Appeals there too. So, I'm just gonna remind myself of that. It clarifies the role of the Board of Appeals and the criteria that must be met. That is in, matching the statutes that have been amended. Now, it's been several years, but they were amended. And then there's a certiorari review comment that makes it clear that any person aggrieved by a decision of the board or any taxpayer, any office or department, board or bureau of the city may within 30 days file the decision in the office of the board, commence an action seeking the remedy available by certiorari. So you have 30 days to do that. So that essentially means if somebody doesn't like the board's decision, they can appeal the board's decision within 30 days. They have to appeal staff's decision within 20 days. There's two different criteria.
Who are they appealing it to?
If somebody's appealing a staff decision, like something I decide on or that Scott decides on, that goes to the Board of Appeals. If somebody appeals a Board of Appeals decision, it goes to the court. I just don't want to repeat myself from last month. Area variances are, more clearly defined.
You really hacked this section all up.
I like the blue. That gets, no wait, what gets rid of stuff? Oh, anyway, the strikeouts are my favorite. But you said area variances, so use variance, it was never said in our code that use variances were
Prohibited?
prohibited?
No.
Oh.
And it actually didn't say area variances either, it just had those really general criteria. And now it's specifically stating the criteria for area variances and prohibiting use variances. Then, so there was some confusion under administration of building permits. The difference between use and buildings and when you need an occupancy permit. So it's been broken up into two different paragraphs. One is verification of use, and it's stating that the applicant has to get a certificate of compliance by the city planner prior to a use. So you get a certificate of compliance after plan commission approval. That's in the code already. So that really puts that in my court instead of Scott's. And then building permit issuance requires a occupancy permit from Scott once the building is complete. So it kind of clarifies those differences. And then it cleans up the things that are required in order to get an occupancy permit.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yep.
The occupancy permit, when you issue those, is that when everything that's on the checklist that we've gone through and you've gone through are completed?
So if somebody comes in here for a business plan of operation and you approve it, so hopefully they've done everything before coming to you, and it's usually they're on the consent agenda, whatever, and you approve it, then I issue a certificate of compliance. I haven't, so nothing was done prior to me coming. When I started at the city, I was only issuing those certificate of compliances for bigger projects, the ones that are on the regular agenda, and I wasn't doing anything with the consent agenda items. But the code does, under the business plan of operation section, it does talk about a certificate of compliance. So going forward, I would issue a certificate of compliance every time, which actually is beneficial because we get a lot of calls asking for that, because they want confirmation. And my answer is usually check the minutes at the end of the next month, that's your confirmation, or if you want, I can write a certificate of compliance. And so I maybe do that 20% of the time, but we'll just start with this adoption, a new policy where they all get them, and it's cleaner, and it's written documentation of approval. It was really used when they were getting the small business grants. We were getting quite a few calls.
Okay, thank you.
And then Scott is asked to increase the bond from 250, there's two different references, $250 and $500 to $5,000.
The code specifically allows for a temporary occupancy. And that's something I never got involved with, but someone has that right. And so I worry that someone could ask for a temporary occupancy, give us a small amount of money, and then just blow me off. So I just want to make sure the number is high enough that we fully refund once they obtain the permanent final occupancy.
So I'm trying to understand this, Scott. So when they blow you off, what does that mean?
Hey, Scott, can you please speak into the
Yeah,
mic?
when you say they blow you off, what does that mean?
You could have, and that's probably not even a good example, a large new commercial building ready to be occupied, but they're not fully ready, so they want a temporary occupancy. So in our existing code, the amount of bond they must post is really small. It's either $50 or $200, and I'm suggesting it's not enough to ensure that they come back for a final occupancy.
And where I'm headed with this is, you mentioned commercial. I wonder if $5,000 is enough, and I'm wondering if a percentage.
Scott, if you could,
If a percentage of value, one, you don't have to amend it all the time due to inflation, but two, if you're talking about a commercial building and it's a $15 million building and it's $5,000, you may not get anybody's attention with $5,000.
And the commercial building might not have been the best example, because on a commercial building, there's often public-like infrastructure that must be installed that we hold a bond for, not through my office, but through like a developer's agreement. And that's normally what lags occupancy. You know, you occupy in February, the landscaping's not done. So we have a bond, maybe like a sidewalk or parking that's not done, and we have that money. And so I'm confident that we'll get done, or we'll install it ourselves. But like a residential occupancy, I didn't even know we had the ability to grant a temporary. And so I have to manage that myself, and every now and then I get caught. And so someone does the bare minimum to get a final inspection in the eyes of the state, but their home is not complete. And so sometimes it never is completed. So now I have an option. If you want to move in this weekend, you're going to have to give me a big deposit, and that will, I think, ensure that he comes back and finishes the job and comes back and gets the final occupancy. I'm convinced that for a residential occupancy, that's the right amount. For commercial, good point, it may not be.
But that's why we have the bond.
It's not a chronic problem, but we're just trying to avoid it. So, yeah, it makes sense to put something in place and see how that plays out.
And I think the intent is to fully refund it. So hopefully it's just for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks.
Okay. Changes and amendments, that's nothing too exciting there. You know, we changed the Board of Appeals noticing is 300 feet instead of 100 feet now. We talked about that. Okay, permitted accessory uses in all residential districts. Just as a reminder, we're going to aggregate square footage shall not exceed 600 square feet on lots less than 14,000 square feet, and 750 square feet or 2%, whichever is greater, on lots 14,000 square feet or larger. That's what you guys decided on. And then there's other provisions regarding can't be used for amenities of a living unit and human habitation and sleeping quarters are prohibited. Plumbing is limited to a single sink and toilet. I do want to bring something up. The header is permitted accessory uses in all residential districts. So I think the idea here would be to state permitted accessory uses and structures in all residential districts. And then I would like to list out what those districts are. So all of the RL districts, and tonight's scenario, it's zone B1A, but it has that component of it being a single, you can have a single family use or a business use. So I feel like it should include B1A when the property is utilized for residential purposes. Or something like that, whatever you guys want to do. But I think it would be a lot clearer if it was, the districts were clearly listed. Any comments on the B1A? Otherwise, it's all we would not include the A2, right, or A1?
I'm thinking all the RL, all the RE, all the R,
Yep.
B1A, and you'd have to decide whether it's CBD2 that allows single-family homes.
Yeah. Well,
See, how are you gonna get these accessory structures in CBD?
I agree that the CBD2
Yeah.
lots are normally smaller, so it's probably not a problem.
or we put it in and then it's not a problem.
It'd be a waste of real estate, but.
True.
Yeah, I'd say put it in, because who's gonna be asking for it anyway?
What about the other CBD?
And in 20 years, they
CBD4?
can say, wonder why CBD2's in there.
Doesn't make any sense.
Well, then they can change it.
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking, I'm not gonna be.
So B1A, do you want it to just apply for residential?
Yeah.
Yep.
Amy, what standards apply in A, agricultural?
Well, none right now other than your floor area, whatever you have, I don't even know what it is, open space and floor area ratio, which allows pretty much anything.
You have to be careful because we have agricultural properties, but we also have, I'll call them residential properties zoned ag. There's a big difference.
So you can add a provision there. What did they do previously? Nothing? Or did you use this
I
standard?
think we applied the 1,200 square feet.
You did apply. So you could include the agricultural districts. It's just, like if those are big properties, then it's not gonna be a big deal, but if they're
For
not.
true farm use on multiple acres, Ag 1,
This isn't gonna work.
didn't make any sense.
I understand.
Well, the
So,
houses are in egg zoning.
yeah,
But you
so
don't wanna-
somehow you have to
you don't wanna hurt the
distinguish. I
farmers.
I
Right.
don't want to go talk to a farmer and tell him, you can't put up your next outbuilding for cows because,
right.
On agriculturally zoned parcels greater than 10 acres.
What did you say?
On agriculturally zoned parcels greater than 10 acres. Or less than 10 acres is
Yeah.
what applies.
Less than 10 acres.
10 is what we were,
Or-
Yeah,
and you
include-
can
include
pick
ag.
whatever number you want.
yeah,
I can
Yeah,
live with
that's a
that.
good number.
10, yeah.
Okay. I don't think anything else is that exciting. Are you guys ready to schedule a public hearing?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Quarter to 10, yeah. Whatever you want.
So it is gonna be a
I'm
little.
out of drink,
It is
I'm out of
gonna-
gummies.
Might be a little overwhelming. I think I'm gonna try to stick in there all the districts, with the 5 acre minimum for lot served by septic system.
Okay, we all done with that one? We gotta schedule the public hearing.
Yes.
Need
schedule a public
a
hearing.
motion?
Yeah, I'll move to schedule a public hearing for Article 4 of zoning districts and Article 10, administration and penalties of the City of Delafield zoning ordinance for October 27th.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, 11C, acknowledge updated zoning and land use plan maps that are reflective of recent amendments that have been enacted by the Common Council.
Okay, so I just included, we've had a lot of amendments over the last 2 years. So I updated the zoning and land use maps. They should be reflective of current conditions. I did notice I am gonna make a couple more tweaks. So the zoning map, I mean, you already adopted the zoning changes, so you don't, I don't believe you have to formally approve these. But I noticed there's some notes in the corner of the zoning map, and it references sections of the code in the old chapters. So it's now chapter 52, it used to be chapter 17, so I need to update those cross-references. And then I did notice that there's our mapper, the PUD for like Hawthorne Farms got stretched to that adjacent property to the east on the south side. There's that long residential lot. So I don't believe that's supposed to be in the PUD. So I gotta remove that.
Oh, right here.
I would just encourage you, I find this often on maps, in very small print, there is a date. Please check the documents and make sure that date is
Yes. we will.
current.
And I don't think they.
Sometimes we publish new maps and then we don't change the date and it
Yeah.
appears old.
Yeah, so they just have a draft of July 2023, but we'll update that. And then the land use plan was also amended. And the only thing on the land use plan, I believe, that I want to have them change is it says central business district, and as part of our review of the previous projects, decided it should really just read central business. These shouldn't be districts.
The current map's getting pretty old. Do you recall what the date is on that? Is it like 2016 or something like that? Or anyhow, we need a new published updated map.
So, but it should be reflective of all the land use changes. And you'll see like, this brown area that's now planned mixed use on the east side. It's got some hatching on it. In the table, it says special use area 2. So you'll know to go to special use area 2. We have to add those special use areas to the land use plan document. I haven't quite figured out, there it doesn't appear to be a Word document available to work with, so it may be a matter of adding them as at the end of the document with the reference inside, and until you update your comprehensive plan, it's just gonna look a little goofy. But as long as people know where to go and they get there, I think we're okay.
Okay. So do we need a motion there, or are we
No, it's
just looking for a head nod?
If you wanna acknowledge it, I mean, I guess you could make a motion to acknowledge the maps and just say with additional changes, necessary to reflect current conditions, that would be good.
Why don't you make the changes and
Bring it
we'll
back?
approve them when they're
Okay.
done. Then we can look at these too and see if there's anything else.
Yeah. So, just when I put them, the next ones in the packet, just really do take a close look and make sure I'm not missing anything, and I can also print copies too next time. It's kind of hard to read on. I can print like 2 big ones, so you can at least look at them before or after the meeting.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to 12A, correspondence, refer to you anything in the packet, and then 12B, planner, schedule November and December meeting dates. We typically review these for the holidays and make sure they make sense in the calendar.
So right now, the November scheduled meeting is November 29th. That's the week after Thanksgiving. Are there any issues with attendance? Nope, good. Okay, we'll keep that date. December is December 27th. I'll be honest, I'm probably gonna be gone that week.
So typically, we'd move it up to the 20th.
Does the 20th work for everybody?
Yeah,
And let's try not to have it, but if we have to, we'll do it, right?
I like that.
Like, you know, try and schedule around it if you can.
Yeah.
If there's one person in here for a sign, we're not gonna be happy.
We haven't had that condition in a really long
All right, I'm
time,
just saying, it's
but
happened.
it could happen. That'd be wonderful.
What do we say for December again? Sorry, 20th?
December 20th. Okay, building inspector.
Nothing to add.
Oh,
All right.
man. All right, 13, planning commission meeting and dates and deadlines. Next regular meeting is October 25th. The next regular meeting submittal date is September 27th. Seeing no further business, we are now adjourned at 9:52. Thank you, everyone.